Your father is dangerously hot. You should have warned me. Claire Bennett hit send, and the phone in the hand of the man across the room lit up. He read it. He looked up. He smiled. That is an interesting observation, Miss Bennett. 300 people stood between them, and Claire could not breathe in front of a single one of them. What she didn't know yet was that the man holding her secret already knew her name, her address, and the name of the man who had been standing outside her apartment door for 11 straight nights. If this story pulls you in, please subscribe and stay with me to the very end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels tonight. 40 minutes before she ruined her own life, Claire Bennett was sitting in the passenger seat of a car that cost more than her culinary school tuition, trying to talk her way out of the door. "Turn around," she said. "No." "Isabella, turn the car around." "Claire, we are 4 blocks away." "Then it's a short trip back." Isabella Moretti didn't even look over. She had been driving with one hand for 20 minutes and arguing with the other, and she had the specific patience of a woman who had won this fight in her head 3 days ago. "You said yes," Isabella said. "I said maybe." "You said yes on Tuesday in my kitchen holding my wine?" "That was a hostage situation." "That was you agreeing." Claire pressed her thumb into the seam of her purse until it hurt. It was a thing she did now. Her therapist had a word for it. Claire preferred to call it not screaming in front of people. "I don't belong at these things," she said. "You cooked for a governor last year." "I cooked. I didn't stand around with a governor. There's a difference. In the kitchen, I know what my hands are for." Isabella finally glanced over, and her voice dropped out of the teasing register into something older and gentler, which somehow was worse. "Claire, when was the last time you were in a room with more than 6 people in it?" Claire didn't answer. "That's what I thought." "That's not fair." "It's completely fair. It's my whole point." Isabella turned slow, and the car went quiet around them. "You've been out of that relationship for 14 months. 14. And in 14 months you've built exactly 2 things: a work schedule and a wall. I built a life. You built a bunker, honey." Claire laughed sharp and unhappy. "Wow, I love you. That's why I get to say it." Isabella tapped the wheel twice. "One night, 2 hours. You stand next to me, you eat something expensive. You let people look at you, and you survive it. That's the whole assignment. And if I can't, then I'll drive you home myself, and I'll never bring it up again." Claire stared out the window at the traffic sliding past. "Say it," Isabella said. "Say what?" "The thing you tell yourself in the car when you don't want to go in. You do it every time. Your mouth moves." Claire's face went hot. "It does not." "Claire, I survived worse than a party." "There she is," Isabella said, and pulled up to the door. Dead. The first thing Claire noticed was the noise. Not the volume, the shape of it. Rich rooms had a specific hum. Everyone talking at half speed, everyone certain they'd be listened to eventually. The second thing she noticed was that Isabella changed. It happened somewhere between the door and the third handshake. Isabella's shoulders came back. Her voice picked up a half-inch of steel. She started calling people by their last names. "You're doing a voice," Claire whispered. "I am not doing a voice." "You said, 'Mr. Halloran, always a pleasure,' like you were about to read him his rights." "That's because Mr. Halloran pledged $40,000 in March and paid 9. Isabella took a glass off a passing tray and put it directly into Claire's hand. "Drink that, slowly. It's a prop." "A prop. Everyone here is holding something so their hands don't panic. Yours is a Bordeaux." Claire held the glass and felt ridiculously a little better. "Okay," she said. 2 hours. 2 hours? And then you drive me home and we get the fries. Obviously we get the fries. I'm not an animal." A woman in green swept past and caught Isabella by the arm, and Isabella went with her, mouthing 90 seconds over her shoulder, and Claire was alone. She counted the exits. 2. She checked her phone. 8:14. She took a swallow of the prop. And that was when the room changed temperature. She felt it before she understood it. The hum dropped a full step like an orchestra tuning down. Conversations didn't stop, they just got careful. 3 men near the bar turned their bodies without turning their heads. Claire looked toward whatever it was that everybody had suddenly decided not to look at. A man had walked in. He wasn't loud. He wasn't fast. He was greeting people the way a person greets a room he owns briefly warmly, and then moving on so that nobody got the chance to hold him. He put a hand on an older man's shoulder and said something that made the man laugh out loud. He listened to a woman for a while with his head tilted, and when she finished, he said something short, and she looked relieved. He was somewhere near 50 and completely unbothered about it. Dark hair going silver at the sides. A face built for saying no. Claire realized she'd been staring for maybe 4 full seconds, which is roughly 3.5 seconds too long. She turned away. She turned back. "Oh, come on," she muttered to herself. Isabella reappeared at her elbow with the timing of a woman who had never once missed anything in her life. "Claire." "Hi. Hello. I'm having a great time." "You're red. It's the wine." "You've had 1 sip. It's a strong wine." Isabella followed her eyeline and her face did something complicated. "Oh," she said. "Oh, no." "What?" "No. I didn't say anything. You were looking. I was surveying the room. For exits. As trained. Claire." And then the man was there. He didn't arrive so much as the space simply included him. "Isabella," he said. And Isabella. Isabella Moretti, who once talked a health inspector out of a citation using nothing but eye contact, said, "Dad, hi." Claire's stomach dropped through the floor and kept going. "You're late," Isabella said. "I'm the host. I arrive when I arrive." "That's not how hosting works." "It's how it's worked for 11 years. He turned. "And this is Claire Bennett, my friend, from school." Isabella's hand landed on Claire's back flat and warning. "Claire, this is my father, Dante." "Miss Bennett." His voice was lower than she expected, and quieter than she expected, and it did something extremely unhelpful to the back of her neck. "Mr. Moretti," Claire said, "thank you for having me." "You don't want to be here," Claire blinked. "Excuse me. You're standing at a 30-degree angle to the door, and you've checked your watch twice since I walked up." He said it without any cruelty at all, which somehow made it worse. "You don't want to be here." Isabella made a strangled noise. "Dad, it's an observation. It's rude. It's accurate," Claire heard herself say. Both Morettis looked at her. "It's accurate," she said again. "I don't want to be here. She dragged me. I've been calculating how fast I could get to that door for about 6 minutes." There was a pause. Then Dante Moretti smiled small real gone in a second. 31 seconds, he said. "You'd have to go around the ice sculpture. Everyone forgets the ice sculpture." "I did not forget the ice sculpture." "You forgot the ice sculpture." "I was going to go through the service hallway." His eyebrows moved a fraction of an inch. "There's a service hallway." "There's always a service hallway. It's a hotel." Claire's mouth was moving faster than her judgment. "Kitchens don't have front doors. If you want out of a building, you follow the food." He looked at her for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You're a cook," he said. "I'm a chef. There's a difference. There's an enormous difference, and I'm not explaining it at a party." Isabella laughed one shocked bark and covered it with her glass. Dante didn't laugh. But something in his face shifted like a man who'd found an unexpected coin in an old coat. "Miss Bennett," he said, "enjoy your evening. And when you make your escape, use the north hallway. The south one has a step down that nobody warns you about." And then he was gone into the next handshake, the next shoulder, the next small kind thing, said briefly. Claire stood absolutely still. "Don't," she said. "I didn't say anything," said Isabella. "You're vibrating." "I'm allowed to vibrate. That was the longest conversation my father has had with a stranger since 2019. Claire made it 11 minutes before she had to be alone. She found a spot near a column where the noise thinned out and stood there letting her heart come down out of her throat. It had been fine. It had been fine. She had talked to a human man and had not once thought about doorways or about the sound of a key in a lock at 2 a.m. Which was, of course, when she thought about it. She pulled out her phone to have something to do with her hands, and her thumbs entirely on their own betrayed her. Claire. Okay. You could have warned me. Claire. Your father is dangerously hot. You should have warned me. She hit send and immediately felt better, because that was what best friends were for you. Took the humiliating thought out of your own head and put it in someone else's. And then it stopped being a real thing and started being a joke. She looked up, smiling, ready to catch Isabella's eye across the room. Isabella was at the bar. Isabella was laughing at something. Isabella's phone was not in her hand. Isabella's phone was in Isabella's clutch, which was on the bar closed. Claire's smile died halfway. Some slow, cold animal in the back of her brain sat up. She looked down at her screen. She looked at the name at the top of the thread. It didn't say Isabella. It said D. Moretti, because 40 minutes earlier, standing in the coat line, Isabella had typed her father's number into Claire's phone herself and said, "Take this if you get separated and you panic, and I don't pick up. He will. He always picks up." Claire's whole body went numb from the scalp down. She looked up. Across the room, 40 feet away mid-sentence, with a man in a gray suit, Dante Moretti reached into his jacket. "No," Claire whispered. "No, no, no." She stabbed at the screen. "Delete for everyone. Delete for everyone." The little wheel spun. He took the phone out. He looked at it. His conversation stopped. The man in the gray suit kept talking for a second and then trailed off confused. Dante read it, and Claire, who had once stood in a walk-in freezer for 20 minutes, because she couldn't make herself walk back into her own apartment, discovered a completely new category of fear. He looked up, straight at her. No searching, no scanning the room, like he'd known exactly where she was standing the entire time. Her phone buzzed in her hand. D. Moretti. "That is an interesting observation, Miss Bennett." Claire made a sound. It wasn't a word. Her phone buzzed again. D. Moretti. "The ice sculpture is to your left. You have about 9 seconds." She did not take the 9 seconds, partly because her legs weren't working, and partly because somewhere underneath the mortification was a small, furious, very old voice that said, "You already ran from one man. Don't make a habit of it." So she stood there, straight-backed, chin up, dying, and let him cross the room. "Miss Bennett." "Mr. Moretti." "You didn't run." "I considered it." "I know. You looked at the north hallway." "You watched me consider it. I gave you the exit myself. I was curious whether you'd use it." He slipped the phone back into his jacket. "You should be more careful where you send your secrets." "I would love the floor to open up now if that's an option." "It isn't." "Then I'd like to formally apologize and then be excused to go live somewhere else, another state, possibly Canada." "Sit down, Miss Bennett." "I'm not sitting down. There's a chair 4 feet behind you, and your hands are shaking." Claire looked down at her own hands. They were. She sat. He didn't sit. He stood at an angle to her, half turned toward the room so that from any distance it looked like two people who happened to be standing near each other, and she understood with a small lurch that he had done that on purpose. That he had positioned them so nobody would see her face. "I'm going to say something," he said. "And then we can both pretend the last 3 minutes didn't happen. Please. You didn't insult me. You embarrassed yourself. Those are different, and only one of them is my problem." A pause. "It isn't mine." Claire let out a breath she'd apparently been holding since the year before. "That's the single kindest way anyone has ever told me to shut up," she said. "I have practice. I have a daughter. She's better at it than you. She's better at everything than me. That's the point of daughters." And Claire laughed real startled out loud. and instantly hated herself for it, because she had come here tonight promising she would not enjoy anything. "Now," Dante said, and his tone changed by maybe 2 degrees. "How long have you been checking that phone?" Claire went still. "What? Since I walked in, 11 times. You counted 11 times and not once for the time. You looked at the top of the screen. That's not someone waiting for a friend. That's someone waiting for a message they don't want." Claire's mouth went dry. "That's you don't get to do that." "Do what?" "Read me, like I'm a spreadsheet." "I read rooms. You're in the room." "Well, stop." "All right." He didn't ask again. He just stood there, patient, half-turned to the crowd, and let the silence do what silence does. And Claire, who had promised herself she would never again explain herself to a powerful man, felt the words crawling up her throat anyway. She didn't get to say them, because her phone buzzed. She looked down out of pure animal reflex. It was a photo. Her door. Her actual apartment door, the one with the scuff on the bottom panel, where she'd kicked it closed with a grocery bag under each arm every Sunday for 2 years. The hallway light was on. The angle was close arm's length. Whoever took it had been standing near enough to knock. Under the photo, "You can change your locks, Claire. You still belong to me." The glass slipped. She caught it with her other hand before it fell, and wine went over her fingers, and she felt none of it. "Miss Bennett." She didn't hear him. "Claire?" She looked up. Her ears were roaring. The party had gone very far away down a tunnel, like something happening on a television in another apartment. "Breathe out," Dante said. "Not in, out, all the way." She breathed out. Again. She breathed out again. "Good. Now you can hear me." His voice hadn't gotten louder. It had gotten flatter and steadier and closer. "Nobody in this room is looking at you. I'm standing between you and every one of them. You have as long as you need." She got maybe 15 seconds before her body decided to be furious instead of afraid, which was, her therapist said, progress. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not." "I said I'm fine." "You are holding a broken glass." She looked down. There was a crack running up the bowl where her thumb was pressed. "Okay," she said. "I'm not fine." He took the glass out of her hand. He set it down somewhere she didn't watch. Then he actually crouched in a $4,000 suit in the middle of his own charity gala, so that he wasn't looking down at her anymore. "Do you want help?" he said. And there it was. Claire had spent 14 months and $191 an hour learning to hear that question correctly. "Do you want help?" was how it always started. Not with a threat. Never with a threat. It started with a man saying, "Let me handle it. Let me take care of it. Let me make it so you don't have to think about it." And then one day, you looked up, and you didn't have a bank card in your own name, and you couldn't remember the last time you'd decided anything. "No," she said. He didn't move. "No," she said again louder. "Thank you. No." "All right. I mean it. I know what you're offering. I know what men like you can do and how fast you can do it, and I am telling you no." "I heard you, and I know how this goes. You make one call and it's handled and it's clean, and it costs me nothing tonight, and then in 8 months I wake up and I can't make a decision without checking whether you'd approve." Her voice cracked, and she hated it. "I already did that. I did that for 4 years. I am not doing it again for a nicer man." Dante Moretti was quiet. Then he stood up. "Understood," he said. Claire blinked. "That's it. That's it. You're not going to argue or explain to me that I'm being irrational." "You're not being irrational. You're being consistent." He straightened his cuff. "You told me the rules. I'm not going to break them in the first 4 minutes." She stared at him. "Why," she said slowly, "are you being decent about this?" "Because I've watched what happens to people who get helped whether they like it or not," he said. "I've been the one doing it. And that would have been the end of it. That should have been the end of it." Except that he said very quietly, almost to himself, He was there 11 nights ago, too. He didn't take a picture that time. The floor tilted. What? Claire whispered. Dante's jaw moved. That was a mistake, he said. What did you just say, Miss Bennett? What did you just say to me? He turned to face her fully, and for the first time all night, Claire watched a man who was never caught out get caught out. Sit down, he said. I'm standing. Then stand. He exhaled through his nose. Claire, what is the man's name? You already know his name. I want to hear you say it, because if you say it, then I'm not the one who told you and this conversation is yours. Claire's whole face was numb. Evan, she said. Evan Cross. Yes. How do you know that name? Because 8 weeks ago, Evan Cross sat in my office and tried to sell me 200 restaurants. The party kept going around them. Somebody laughed. Somebody clinked a glass. You're lying, Claire said. I don't lie about business. It's inefficient. He was in sales. He sells commercial refrigeration. He was in commercial refrigeration. Now he brokers supply contracts. Or he says he does. Dante's voice was completely level. He came to Moretti Distribution asking to be put in the middle of our produce lines. 8%. He had a folder. He had projections. He had references. So one of the references was you. Claire's stomach turned over. No, she said. Page 4. Claire Bennett, executive chef, culinary consultant, longtime partner. He said it like he was reading it off a wall. He used the word partner. He let it sit in both meanings and didn't clarify. He doesn't have the right. He had a photograph of the two of you in the folder, from 4 years ago. He'd printed it. Claire put her hand out and found the back of the chair. Why? She said. Why would he? Because your name means something in this city, and his doesn't. Dante's voice had gone very quiet and very hard. Because he found out that the only valuable thing he'd ever had was you and you left. And men like that don't grieve Miss Bennett. They re-inventory. Stop. You asked. I said stop. He stopped. Claire stood there with her hand on a chair in a room full of strangers and felt 14 months of very careful reconstruction come apart at one seam. Did you give it to him? She said. What? The contract. Did you give him the contract? No. Why not? Because his numbers were fiction and his references didn't check out. A pause. And because when my people called you to verify, you'd never heard of the deal. Claire's head came up. Nobody called me. Somebody called your restaurant in March and asked if you consulted for Cross Logistics. Claire's mind went white and then horribly filled in. Denise, she said. Denise took a call in March. She said it was a wrong number. She said the guy asked for Chef Bennett of Cross. She joked about it. That was my office. That was... Claire pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. That was your office. So you've known who I am for 5 months. I knew your name for 5 months. I didn't know you were my daughter's friend until 40 minutes ago. He didn't look away. When Isabella said Claire Bennett, I had to decide in about 1 second whether to pretend I'd never heard it. And you decided? I decided to say hello and find out what kind of person you were before I decided anything else. Claire laughed. It came out cracked and awful. So the ice sculpture thing, she said. The service hallway. That was what an interview. It was a conversation. It was an interview. Everything is an interview, Dante said. That's not cynicism. That's just what people are doing when they talk. That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. You'd have said it yourself in 10 years. Don't tell me what I'd say. Fair. Claire pressed both hands flat against her own ribs. An old trick. Feel the outside of yourself, you're still in here. 11 nights ago, she said. You said he was there 11 nights ago, which means somebody was watching my building. Dante didn't answer. Say it. There was a car on your street for 6 nights after the reference check, he said. That's standard. When a man puts a stranger's name in a deal I'm evaluating, I find out whether the stranger is a partner or a hostage. And what did you decide I was? Neither, he said. You were somebody who worked 14-hour days and went home alone and had her locks changed twice in 5 weeks. That's not a partner. That's not a hostage. He paused. That's somebody getting out. Claire's eyes burned. She refused, absolutely refused to let it go further than that. You pulled the car? She said. Didn't you? When did you pull the car? Day 6. Why? Because you weren't part of the deal, and watching you stopped being business. He said it flatly, like a man reciting a rule he'd made for himself and didn't especially enjoy. I don't keep eyes on private citizens for my own curiosity, Miss Bennett. That's a line. I have very few of them left. I keep the ones I have. Claire looked at him for a long moment. You could have not told me, she said. Tonight. You could have let me go home not knowing any of that. Yes. Why didn't you? Because you'd have found out in 6 months, Dante said, and then everything I ever said to you would have been a lie you were still standing inside of. There you are. Isabella came around the column at speed, 2 glasses in her hands, laughing at something behind her, and stopped dead. She looked at her father. She looked at Claire's face. What happened? She said. Nothing, said Claire. Claire. Nothing happened. You have your nothing happened face on, which is the face you had in Lyon when you burned your hand to the bone and told me it was fine for 2 hours. Isabella shoved the glasses at a passing server without looking. Dad, what did you say to her? He didn't say anything, Claire said. That's not an answer, that's a... Isabella. Dante's voice cut clean across hers. She said nothing happened. Let her have it. Isabella's mouth closed. Claire saw something pass over her friend's face, surprise, and under it, something almost like hurt. Like a girl noticing her father give a stranger a courtesy he'd never once given her. Claire filed it away without meaning to. I need air, Claire said. I'll come. I need air alone. 90 seconds. That's all. Claire, you said 1 night 2 hours survive it. Claire made her voice come out steady, and it was the hardest single thing she'd done in a year. I'm surviving it. Give me 90 seconds. Isabella let her go. We'll see. Claire came back 4 minutes later with her face washed and her spine welded shut. And Dante Moretti was exactly where she'd left him, and he had not, she noticed, checked his watch once. I'd like to say something, she said. Go ahead. I'm not going to be a project. All right. I mean it. I know what tonight looked like. Sad woman, bad ex, powerful man with a phone. I know the shape of that story, and I'm not in it. Understood. And I'd like... Her voice caught and she pushed through it. I would like you to never do that again. The car, the checking, any of it. Even if you think you're being kind. Especially if you think you're being kind. Dante was quiet for a second. Done, he said. Just like that. You want a promise or you want a negotiation? Because I'll give you the first one for free, and I'll lose the second one, and I don't enjoy losing. Claire almost smiled. Then I'm going home, she said. One thing. Of course there's one thing. It's a job. Claire stopped. Absolutely not, she said. You haven't heard it. I don't have to hear it. It's guilt money. It's a very expensive apology in the shape of employment. And I've been bought before Mr. Moretti. And it was cheaper, and it still cost me 4 years. The Bridgeport kitchen, Dante said. Claire's mouth stopped working. The what? The Moretti Foundation runs a community kitchen in Bridgeport, 1,100 meals a week on paper. His voice was flat again, businesslike, and somehow that made it land harder. It's actually 400. The last director quit in August. The one before that I fired. There's a walk-in that's been running 11 degrees warm since June, and nobody wrote it down. Last month we spent $19,000 and fed fewer people than we did in March. That's, Claire heard herself say it before she could stop it, that's a purchasing problem, not a staffing problem. That's what I said. My board says it's a staffing problem. Your board is wrong. My board is always wrong. That's what boards are for. He looked at her. I've had 2 consultants tell me to shut it down. Then don't hire consultants. That's why I'm not. Claire's heart was doing something complicated, and she did not appreciate it. You're doing it again, she said. Doing what? The interview thing. Yes, Dante said. I am. And Claire found to her genuine irritation that she respected that more than any denial he could have given. Why me, she said. Because you've been standing here for 20 minutes having the worst night of your recent life, he said, and the first time your face came back on was when I said the word walk-in. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. That's not fair, she said. It's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be true. She said no. She said no in the hallway. She said no in the coat line. She said no to Isabella in the car 4 times while Isabella drove and said nothing at all in the world's loudest silence. Say it, Claire said finally. Nope. Isabella. I'm not saying anything. I'm a wall. I'm a beautiful silent wall. You have opinions. I can hear them from here. Okay, fine. Isabella pulled up outside Claire's building and threw the car into park hard enough to rock them both. My father has run that foundation for 11 years, and I have never once heard him ask a single human being for help with it. Not one. He'd rather burn $19,000 a month than admit he doesn't know how to fix something. Claire stared at her. And tonight he asked you, Isabella said. A woman he met at 8 o'clock. That's not... So either my father has lost his mind or you're better at your job than you've ever let yourself believe. Pick one. Both are interesting. Isabella turned in her seat. Now, what actually happened tonight? And Claire, looking at her best friend's face, the face that had shown up at 3 a.m. 14 months ago with a rented van and a crowbar and 0 questions, opened her mouth to tell her everything. The text, the photo, the folder with her name on page 4. All of it. Nothing? She said. I got overwhelmed. It's a lot of people. She would think about that moment for a long time afterward. The exact second she decided that protecting Isabella and lying to Isabella were the same action. They were not. Okay, Isabella said softly, and didn't believe her and let her go anyway. Claire stood outside her own door for 4 minutes. It looked exactly like the photograph. That was the worst part. It looked completely boringly normal, the scuff on the bottom panel, the hallway light, the neighbor's mat 2 doors down. Nothing had changed. Nothing was different. Except that somebody had stood right here. She got inside. She locked it. She checked it. She unlocked and relocked it, which her therapist called a compulsion, and Claire called being correct once in her life. Then, she sat on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet, the way she had every night for the first 2 months after she left, and she took out her phone. Unknown. You can change your locks, Claire. You still belong to me. She looked at it for a long time. Then she did the thing she had not done in 14 months. She typed back. Claire, I'm not afraid of you. Delete. Claire, come near my building again and I'm calling the police. Delete. Claire. Why did you put my name in a folder? Her thumb hovered over send for 11 seconds. She deleted it too. Because the one thing she had learned, the single most expensive lesson of her entire adult life, was this: Evan Cross did not want an answer. Evan Cross wanted a conversation. Any conversation. He would take rage. He would take hatred. He would take a restraining order if it meant she was thinking about him. The only thing he couldn't survive was being irrelevant. Claire put the phone face down on the floor. Then she picked it back up and opened a different thread and typed one line. Claire. What's the actual food budget at Bridgeport? Not the board number, the real one. The reply came back in 90 seconds. He'd been awake. D. Moretti, $6,400 a week. Claire. And how much of that goes to one supplier? D. Moretti. I don't know. Claire. That's your problem. D. Moretti. Yes, I know. Claire sat on her kitchen floor and stared at the ceiling and said out loud to nobody, "Don't." Then she typed, "Claire, I'll look at it." Looking is not agreeing. D. Moretti. Understood. Claire, I have conditions. D. Moretti. Of course you do. Claire. 1. It's my kitchen, not your boards, not yours. If I say a supplier is out, they're out, and nobody gets a phone call from you about it afterward. D. Moretti. Agreed. Claire. 2. You don't put anyone on my street ever again. D. Moretti. Already agreed. Ask for something harder. Claire's jaw tightened. Claire. 3. If Evan Cross ever contacts you again about a contract about me, about anything, you tell me before you do a single thing about it. Not after. Before. The dots appeared. They stopped. They appeared again. 40 seconds went by. D. Moretti. That's the one that costs me something. Claire. I know. D. Moretti. You understand what you're asking. You're asking me to wait. Claire. Yes. D. Moretti. I don't wait. That's the entire architecture of my life. Claire. Then say no. The dots stopped for a long time. Claire sat there on the floor of a small kitchen in a small apartment with a chair still wedged under the doorknob out of habit, and she realized she was holding her breath, not because she was afraid of the answer, but because for the first time in 14 months, she had asked a powerful man for something and was genuinely, honestly prepared to hear no. That right there. That was the thing therapy had been building toward for a year, and she hadn't noticed it arrive until it was already in the room with her. Her phone lit up. D. Moretti. Agreed. All 3. D. Moretti. Monday. 6 a.m. The walk-in is the first thing you'll want to see, and you'll want to see it before the delivery. Claire read it twice. Claire. 5:30. D. Moretti. Why 5:30? Claire. Because if you want to know who's stealing from a kitchen, you don't watch the kitchen. You watch the loading door. 3 dots. D. Moretti. Miss Bennett. Claire. Yes. D. Moretti. In 11 years, nobody has ever said that to me. Claire looked at the screen. And then Claire Bennett, who had walked into that building 4 hours earlier, planning to survive 2 hours and go home, put her head back against the cabinet door and laughed until her eyes ran for reasons she could not have explained to a single living person, including herself. She got up off the floor. She put the chair back under the table where chairs go. Then she went and stood in front of her door and looked at the deadbolt and made herself say it out loud in an empty apartment, the way you have to say things out loud before you're allowed to believe them. I'm not hiding in here anymore. And at 5:29 on Monday morning, in the cold and the dark, on the wrong side of Bridgeport, Claire Bennett was standing at a loading door with a clipboard, a flashlight and a thermometer 21 minutes early, watching a truck that had no business being there back slowly into the bay. The truck had no markings on it. That was the first thing wrong. The second thing wrong was that it was 70 minutes early, and the third thing wrong was that the loading door had already been rolled up from the inside before the driver ever touched a horn. Claire clicked off her flashlight and stood very still against the wall. The driver got out. Somebody came down off the dock to meet him. They didn't shake hands. They didn't talk much. They started moving crates, and Claire watched for a full 90 seconds before her brain caught up with her eyes and told her what was actually happening. The crates were going onto the truck. She waited until the fourth one. Then she walked out into the middle of the bay and said, "Morning." Both men froze. "I'm the new director," Claire said. "First day. Don't stop on my account, I'm counting." The driver looked at the other man. The other man was maybe 60, gray at the temples, wearing a kitchen jacket that had been washed so many times it had gone the color of dishwater. "You're not supposed to be here till 7, he said. "That's true, and you're not supposed to be here till 6:40, so we're both wrong." She lifted the clipboard. "Marcus Wright, Marcus Vale. You've been on the payroll here 11 years. 9. The system says 11. The system's wrong about a lot of things. Yeah, Claire said. I'm noticing. The driver made a move toward the cab. Don't, Claire said without raising her voice. Because if you drive out of here right now, then this is a theft, and I have to call it in as a theft, and then it's out of my hands and into a police report with your plate on it. If you stay for 4 minutes, it might be something else. The driver stopped. Marcus Vale set the crate down on the dock slow, like a man laying something to rest. Something else like what? He said. I don't know yet. That's why I need the 4 minutes. Claire pulled the top sheet off the clipboard. 14 cases of chicken thigh came in Friday. 14 went into the walk-in. This morning there are 6. Where are the other 8 going, ma'am? I'm going to be honest with you, Marcus, because it's 5:40 in the morning and I don't have the energy to be clever. She lowered the clipboard. I already know it's you. I knew before I got out of the car, because whoever's doing this knows the delivery schedule, the log system, and the door code, and there are 4 people in this building with all 3, and 3 of them were on shift in Rockford last Tuesday when it happened anyway. So I'm not here to catch you. I caught you at home on a spreadsheet sitting on my kitchen floor at 1 in the morning. Marcus Vale's jaw worked. So ask me the real question, he said. Fine. Why is a man who's worked here 9 years stealing chicken? I'm not selling it. I didn't say you were selling it. People say I'm selling it. People will say anything. Claire took 1 step closer. I asked where it's going. And Marcus Vale, who had, she would learn later, been fired from 3 jobs for exactly this, and rehired at 2 of them, looked at the concrete for a long moment. 51st and Wallace, he said. There's a church basement. Pastor's name is Ruthie Owens. She feeds about 90 people on Saturday and about 40 on Wednesday, and she's got no license, no permit, no nothing, so she can't be on the foundation list. Claire didn't move. Say the rest, she said. There is no rest. Marcus, there's no rest. You've been doing this since June, which is exactly when the walk-in started running warm, and I don't believe in coincidences before sunrise. She held his eyes. You broke the walk-in. Silence. I didn't break it, he said finally. I stopped reporting it. Why? Because a warm box means spoilage, and spoilage means we throw out product. And product we throw out don't get counted twice. His voice had gone rough. 11 degrees warm is enough to condemn a case on paper. It ain't enough to condemn it in real life. Not in 2 days. Not in December. Claire felt something drop through her cold and clean. You built a spoilage line, she said. You've been writing off good food as garbage and driving the garbage to a church. Yeah. Do you understand that if I write that down the way it actually happened, you don't get fired, you get charged? Yeah. And you did it anyway. Marcus Vale looked up at her, and his eyes were red-rimmed and absolutely level. Lady, he said, last winter we turned away a woman with 2 kids because she couldn't produce a utility bill with a Bridgeport address. That's the rule. That's the rule the board wrote. She stood right there where you're standing, and she said, I'll come back with the paper. And she never came back. He picked the crate back up. You want to fire me, but don't stand in my house at 5:40 in the morning and ask me why. Claire sent the driver home. Then she sat down on the edge of the dock with her clipboard on her knees and called a number she'd had in her phone for less than 72 hours. He picked up on the second ring. You're early, Dante said. Your kitchen is bleeding about $900 a week, and I found where. A pause. Where? Out the back door into a church basement on 51st. Another pause longer. Name. Nope. Miss Bennett. You agreed to a condition, and it was less than 72 hours ago, so I'm going to assume you remember it. Claire's heart was going hard, but her voice came out flat, and she was quietly amazed at herself. It's my kitchen. That means it's my staffing decision, which means I don't give you a name until I've decided what I'm doing with it. The line was quiet for 4 seconds. You're right, Dante said. Claire blinked. Okay. That was faster than I expected. Would you like me to argue I can do it badly if it would help? It might actually. I had a whole speech. Save it. You'll need it for the board. A rustle a door. How much of the 900 is going to the church? All of it. Then it's not theft, it's an unlicensed distribution channel, he said. Those are different problems, and only one of them has a police report attached. Claire pulled the phone away from her ear and looked at it. You didn't ask if he had a family, she said, putting it back. Why would I ask that? Because everybody asks that. It's the sympathy question. It's what people ask when they've already decided to be merciful, and they want a reason they can say out loud. I don't need a reason to say out loud. I need a number. A pause. Does the church do it better than we do? What? You watched him for however long you watched him. You've seen the Bridgeport books. 90 people out of a church basement on a $900 leak versus 400 people a week on a $6,400 budget. His voice was completely even. Is a church basement outperforming my foundation? Claire closed her eyes. Yes, she said. By about 400%. Then he doesn't get fired, Dante said. He gets promoted. That's not, you can't just... I can actually, that's the entire nature of my position. It's the only genuinely enjoyable part. Something clicked on his end. But I won't because it's your kitchen. So I'll say it as a suggestion, and you'll say no, and then in about 11 days you'll do it anyway, and pretend it was your idea. Claire opened her mouth. Closed it. 9 days, she said. Fine. 9. It took her 4. She spent the first 2 days doing nothing but watching, which nearly killed her. She sat in the corner with a legal pad while a kitchen full of people who'd survived 3 directors in 14 months decided collectively and silently that she was going to be the 4th. Nobody was rude. That was the thing. Rude would have been easier. Morning, chef, they said. Whatever you want, chef, they said. You're the boss chef, they said, and then went and did exactly what they'd done the week before. On the 3rd day, she stopped watching. Everybody in, she said. Now, front of house. Bring your knives. Don't bring your phones. 11 people shuffled in. Okay, Claire said. I'm going to tell you 4 true things, and then you can decide how you feel about me. 1, I know you think I'm here because a rich man felt sorry for me. 2, that's not entirely wrong, and I'm not going to pretend it is because I'd rather be embarrassed than be a liar. 3, I've read every log in this building going back 3 years, and I know exactly which of you have been covering for each other and which of you have been covering for yourselves, and I'm not going to say which is which. She let that sit for a second. 4, nobody is getting fired. Not this week, not next week, not by me, not for anything that happened before Monday. Somebody in the back said, That's what the last one said. Who said that? A hand went up reluctantly. Young woman 23, hairnet arms crossed hard across her chest. Name, Yolanda. Yolanda, you're right. What did he do? Said nobody was getting fired. Then fired Rosa in October. Why? 'Cause Rosa took a bus pass out the donation box. Did Rosa put it back? Rosa put back 2. Claire wrote Rosa on the pad and underlined it twice. Is Rosa still in the city? Yolanda's arms came down about an inch. She's at the Jewel on Halsted. Overnights. Get me your number after this. Why? Because she's the only person in this building's history who ever paid back a bus pass with interest, Claire said, and I need someone running the donation intake who does that. There was a silence of a very particular kind. Claire had heard it maybe 6 times in her career. It was the sound of a room deciding to give you one chance. Now, she said, somebody tell me why we're serving lunch at 11:30. Half a dozen people looked at each other. 'Cause that's lunch, somebody said. For who? For lunch. That's when lunch is. Not if you work. Claire tapped the pad. Not if you're on a shift that ends at 2 or starts at 3, or if you're pulling doubles at the warehouse on Ashland, which is 1,900 people, most of them on split shifts 4 blocks from this door. We are serving lunch at exactly the hour that every working poor person in this neighborhood physically cannot come here. Nobody said anything. Who said 11:30? Marcus Vale spoke for the first time all week. Bored, he said. 2019, so the volunteers could get home before rush hour. Claire looked at him. He looked back. Okay, she said. Then we're going to make some people mad. She made a lot of people mad. She moved the meal service to 5:45 and added a second window at 9. She killed the utility bill requirement in a 2-line email and got 11 replies in 90 minutes, 4 of them from lawyers. She pulled 3 suppliers, kept 1, and put the other 2 on a bid cycle that she ran herself over the phone, standing up in a hallway, because she'd found out years ago that she negotiated better on her feet. Dante Moretti walked in on the middle of the second one. No, Ron. Listen to me, listen. I'm not asking for a discount. I'm asking you to stop charging us a delivery premium for a route you already drive. You go past this door at 4:15 every morning on your way to the Hyatt. I've watched you do it 3 days running. Pause. Because I get here at 5:30, Ron. Because that's when the food shows up. Pause. Then invoice it as a Hyatt drop and put us on the same manifest. I don't need my own truck. I need your truck to open twice. Pause. Ron, I'm going to say something, and I want you to hear the whole sentence before you react. If you can't do that, I'm going to Gordon, and Gordon will do it. And then in 18 months, when this place is running 1,100 meals a week, and every foundation in Cook County is asking who supplies it, the answer's going to be Gordon. She listened for 11 seconds. Then she said, Thursday, 6 a.m. Bring the paperwork. I'll bring coffee, and Ron, the coffee's going to be good because I make it so come hungry. She hung up and turned around, and Dante was standing in the doorway with his coat still on. How long have you been there? She said. Since Gordon. Great. You lied to him. I did not. You've never spoken to Gordon. I have an email drafted, Claire said. It's in the folder. It's ready. That's not lying, that's inventory. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. What? She said. Nothing. You're doing a face. I don't do faces. You absolutely do a face. It's very small and very smug, and it's happening right now. I paid that man a 19% premium for 6 years, Dante said. Claire stopped. 6 years. 6 years. Because he sat on a committee with my late wife, and I never once looked at the line. He unbuttoned his coat. You fixed it in a hallway in 4 minutes. It wasn't 4 minutes, it was 2 calls and a spreadsheet, and I lost the first call badly. Miss Bennett. What? Take the compliment. You're extremely bad at it, and it's going to become a problem. He started showing up. Not often. Not on any schedule she could predict which she suspected was deliberate, and which annoyed her enormously. He'd come in at 7 in the morning and stand at the end of the line with his sleeves rolled and hand out trays for 40 minutes without saying a word to anybody and then leave without saying goodbye. The staff didn't know what to do with him. Claire watched them not know. He knows my mother's name, Yolanda said, half accusing on the second week. He asked how her surgery went. How's he know about my mother's surgery? Did you tell somebody? I told Rosa, in October. Then he asked Rosa. Rosa didn't work here in October. Rosa got fired in October. Yeah, Claire said. I know. She thought about that for the rest of the day, and then at 9 at night, she went and found him in the little office off the loading bay going through a stack of invoices with a pen. You kept paying her, Claire said. He didn't look up. Who? Rosa Delgado. She was fired in October. Her last direct deposit went through on the 16th of this month. Dante turned a page. That's a payroll error, he said. It's a payroll error that has repeated 11 times with mathematical precision on the 15th and 30th of every month. Payroll is very consistent. Dante. He looked up. It was the first time she'd used his name. He noticed. She saw him notice, and she saw him decide not to say anything about it, which was somehow worse than if he had. "She has a daughter with a seizure disorder," he said. "The insurance is through the job. If the job ends, the insurance ends, and if the insurance ends, the medication is $900 a month." He set the pen down. "So there's a payroll error. There are 4 of them actually in various parts of my company. I'd rather not discuss the other 3. Claire stood there. "Why don't you tell anyone?" she said. "Because the second it's known, it's a currency." He said it without any heat at all. "Right now it's 4 families who don't know they're being carried. If it becomes known, it's 400 people at my door with a story, and I'd have to start deciding which stories I believe. I've done that. It makes you into something." "Into what?" "Into a man who's good at deciding which stories he believes." Dante said, "Which is not a thing you should ever want to be good at." They fought constantly. That was the part Claire hadn't expected, that it would be fun. They fought about the volunteer schedule. They fought about a donor who wanted his name on the wall. They fought for 45 minutes about whether the kitchen should serve on real plates. "It's an $11,000 dishwasher," he said. "It's an $11,000 dignity machine. It's a dishwasher. Do you eat off paper? That's not. Do you at home? Do you eat off paper? No. Then why do they? Because $11,000 buys 1,900 meals." Dante said, "And I can do that math in my sleep, and so can you, and you're not arguing math with me. You're arguing something else. So argue the actual thing." Claire stopped. "Fine," she said. "The actual thing. When a man walks in here after 9 hours on a loading dock and we hand him a tray that's going in the garbage, we've told him something about himself before he takes a bite. And he already knows. He already knows Dante. He's been told all day. And then he comes to the one place that's supposed to be different, and we tell him again with a plate." Dante was quiet for a moment. "By the dishwasher," he said. She'd had 3 more paragraphs. "Really, you were right in the first sentence. The other 2 minutes were for you." He picked up his coat. "Also get 2. The second one will break in a year, and you'll be too proud to ask." Chet. There was a piano on the mezzanine of the hotel he owned, and he played it at night when the bar closed, and Claire found out about it entirely by accident on a Tuesday in November, when she was there to pick up a signature and got the time wrong by 90 minutes. She stood at the edge of it for a full song without saying anything. He knew she was there. She could tell by his shoulders. "You play," she said when it stopped. "Badly." That was not badly. It was badly. Slowly is not the same as well. He didn't turn around. "My wife played. Properly, I mean conservatory. She used to say I had good hands and no ear, which is the nicest thing anybody's ever said about me." Claire came and sat down on the far end of the bench, the way you'd sit down next to something wild. "What was her name? Elena. How long? 11 years in March. Isabella never talks about her. Isabella was 17. His hands were still on the keys. "There's an age where losing your mother stops being something that happened to you and starts being something that happened to the family, and she's been standing outside that door ever since trying to figure out which one it was." "Have you told her that?" "No." "Why not?" Dante's fingers moved one note quiet. "Because I don't know how to talk to my daughter," he said. "And I've had 11 years and $100 million and I have not solved it. And it is the single worst thing about my life." Claire looked at the side of his face. "Play something else," she said. "Which? Something you're bad at." And he laughed. Actually laughed out loud. The first one she'd ever heard, and it changed his whole face. And Claire sat there on a piano bench at midnight and felt the exact moment the ground moved under her and thought with total clarity, "Oh no." She told herself for 11 days that nothing had happened, because technically, nothing had. Then on the 12th day, a man named Grantham Pike came to see the kitchen. He came with a photographer. He came at 5:40, right into the middle of the new service, and he brought 4 members of the board and a woman with a camera bag. and he stood in the doorway with his arms open like the room had been waiting for him. Chef Bennett. There she is, the turnaround artist. Mr. Pike. Grant, please. Listen, we're doing the annual report, and the Sun-Times wants something for the giving section, and I said, well, hell, come down and see it. You can't put a spreadsheet in a newspaper. There are 200 people eating right now. That's the shot. He turned to the photographer, delighted. That's the shot. Get the line. Get the chef. Can you get behind the counter, ladle? Do you have a ladle? Claire didn't move. Mr. Pike, I need you and your photographer to step back into the hallway. The room got quiet in patches the way a room does. Pike's smile stayed exactly where it was. I'm sorry. I need you to step back into the hallway, Claire said. And I need the camera to go into the bag. Chef, I don't think you understand. This is a $200,000. I understand exactly what it is. Then, there's a woman at table 4, Claire said, who has come here 3 nights this week and eats with her back to the door. Do you know why? Pike blinked. Because her son works 2 blocks from here, Claire said, and she hasn't told him. She has not told her own son that she can't cover groceries, and she has decided she would rather sit with her back to a door for an hour than have him find out. That's the arithmetic she's doing while she eats. That's what she's paying to be here. Claire's voice never went up. Not once. And you want to put a lens in her face for the giving section of the Sunday paper. Nobody in the room said anything at all. Ask her, Claire said. I beg your pardon. Ask her. Go to table 4, introduce yourself, tell her exactly who you are and what the photograph is for and who's going to see it, and if she says yes, I will personally hold the light. Claire took 1 step aside and gestured at the room. Go ahead, she's right there. Grantham Pike looked at table 4. Table 4 had already turned around. He didn't go. This is extraordinarily unprofessional, he said instead to nobody. Probably, Claire said. The hallway's that way. He left. The board members left behind him in a tight, embarrassed knot, and one of them, a woman in her 70s, paused at the door and said quietly, "Good," and kept walking. Claire stood there with her hands shaking so hard, she had to put them in her apron. And then she turned around, and Dante Moretti was standing at the end of the serving line, with a tray in his hands in a hairnet where he had apparently been for the last 20 minutes. How long? Claire said. Since Grant, please. You didn't say anything. No. He gives you $200,000 a year. He gives the foundation $200,000 a year, and he'll give it again in April because he's on 3 other boards, and this is the only one people have heard of. Dante put the tray down. And I didn't say anything because you didn't need me to, and because I have wanted to do that for 6 years and never once found the nerve. You have all the nerve in the world. I have leverage, he said. It's not the same thing. Leverage means you never have to find out if you're brave. Claire's throat closed up. I need to sit down, she said. Yes. I think I just cost you $200,000. You did not. Dante. Claire. And he said it low so nobody else could hear it, and it was the first time, and she felt it land somewhere structural. You didn't cost me anything. You showed me what my own money's been buying for 6 years, and I'd have paid a great deal more than that for the information. He said. It happened 4 nights later in the office off the loading bay, over an invoice neither of them was reading. It was not dramatic. That was what surprised her most. There was no music and no speech. She was arguing about a produce order, and she stopped in the middle of a sentence, and he waited. He waited. Which was the thing. He always waited. He had waited on a phone for 40 seconds 3 weeks ago, rather than promise her something he wasn't sure he could do, and Claire heard herself say, I need you to know that if you take 1 step toward me, I'm not going to stop you, and I need you to know that I hate that, and I need you to not move for about 10 seconds while I decide whether I hate it enough. Dante Moretti did not move. At 8 seconds, she said, okay. And afterward, sitting on the floor of that terrible office, with her back against a filing cabinet and her heart going like a bird in a box, she said the other thing because she'd promised herself she'd say it before she let it become a secret. We have to tell Isabella. Yes, I mean it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow's the Rockford audit. Then Thursday. Thursday, Dante said. And they didn't. Not out of cowardice exactly. It was more ordinary than that, and worse. Thursday there was a burst pipe on Ashland. Friday, Isabella flew to New York for the hotel thing. The following week, Claire got the health department through inspection at 94 points and celebrated by sleeping 14 hours. And Dante spent 9 days unwinding a lease. And somewhere in there, the sentence "we have to tell Isabella" stopped being a plan and started being a thing they said to each other to feel better. 5 weeks went by. "She's going to ask me directly," Claire said one night. "Eventually, she's going to ask me a straight question. Then answer it." "Are you serious?" "Completely. I'm not asking you to lie to my daughter. I've never asked you that. You've never asked me not to either." Dante was quiet. "No," he said. "I haven't." Isabella asked her on a Sunday in Claire's apartment at 9 in the evening, holding a container of leftover pasta and no discernible agenda. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Always." "Is my father okay?" Claire's hands kept moving. She was rinsing something. She kept rinsing it. "What do you mean?" "He's different." Isabella pulled a leg up under her. "Okay, listen. 2 weeks ago he called me. Just called. No reason. Asked how the Rockford thing was going, and then, and I'm not exaggerating, he listened to the answer for 11 minutes. I timed it, Claire. I timed it because I thought something was wrong with him. Maybe he's just... He gave me the Halloran account." Claire turned the water off. "He what?" "He gave me Halloran. That's a 9-figure relationship, and he handed it to me in a hallway like it was a parking ticket. And when I said, 'Are you sure?' he said..." Isabella's voice caught, and she covered it with a laugh. "He said, 'You'll do it better than me, you always have. I just never said it out loud.'" Claire stood at the sink with her back to the room. "That's good," she said. That's really good. I know it's good. That's why it's terrifying. Men like my father don't get nice. They get nice when they're sick or when they're going away or when they've done something." Isabella put the container down. "So, which is it?" "He's not sick." "How do you know?" "Because..." And there it was, the straight question in a kitchen on a Sunday. "Because he works 14-hour days and hands out trays at my kitchen twice a week," Claire said. "That's all. That's how I know." It was true. Every word of it was true, and it was the biggest lie Claire Bennett had ever told in her life, and she knew it while it was still in the air. Isabella looked at her for a beat too long. "Yeah," she said. "Okay." It fell apart on the 11th of December, and it did not fall apart the way Claire had rehearsed it in the shower for 6 weeks. It started with an envelope. Isabella called at 7:10 in the morning, and the first thing she said was, "Somebody sent me pictures." Claire's blood stopped. "What?" "To my office. Inter-office envelope no return, so it came from inside the building, or somebody wanted me to think it did." Isabella's voice was strange. Not angry. Flat, careful, the voice of someone reading a manual while a house burns. "There's 11 of them. Nothing bad. They're not. It's you and my father in a parking structure on the 19th of November, and neither of you is doing anything except standing there, and it's the most obvious thing I've ever seen in my life. Is it true? Isabella, where are you? Is it true?" Claire closed her eyes. "Yes." The line went quiet. "How long?" Isabella said. 5 weeks. A little more." 5 weeks. Let me... "You had dinner at my apartment on the 2nd of December, Isabella said. "You sat on my couch and I told you about the guy from the wine thing, and you gave me advice, Claire. You gave me advice about honesty." "I know. You said, and I'm quoting you, you said, 'People don't leave because of what you did, they leave because of what you hid.' I know what I said. Where are you right now?" "I'm at home. Don't move, Isabella said, and hung up. She got there in 26 minutes, and Dante got there in 31, because Claire had called him the second the line went dead, and he had not asked a single question. He had just said, "I'm coming," and for the rest of her life, Claire would be grateful and furious about that, in roughly equal parts. Isabella was standing in the middle of the room, with her coat still on when he walked in. "Oh," she said. "Great, both of you. Excellent. Very efficient." "Isabella, don't!" She held up a hand, and it was shaking. "Nobody talk for 1 second. 1 second. I've had 90 minutes, and I've got about 4 things to say, and if either of you starts explaining, I'm going to lose them." Nobody talked. Isabella took a breath. "First," she said, "I don't care." Claire's head came up. "I mean it. I've spent an hour and a half trying to make myself care that you're sleeping with my father and I can't get there. It's weird. It's going to be weird at Christmas forever. But he's been alone for 11 years and you've been alone for 1, and honestly, Claire, out of everybody in the world, you're the only person I'd have picked. I'm not done." Her voice cracked straight down the middle. "Second, you lied to me in my own—" She stopped. Started again. "You lied to me in your kitchen. On Sunday. I gave you a door. I built you a door. I asked you a soft question, so it'd be easy, and you looked me in the face and told me he was fine because he hands out trays. That's not—" Third. Isabella turned to her father. "You gave me Halloran because you felt guilty." "That is not true. Then why now, Dad? 11 years, and it's now—" "Because Claire asked me why I'd never given you anything," Dante said. "And I didn't have an answer. And it took me 4 days to understand that I didn't have an answer because there isn't one." Isabella stopped, like she'd walked into glass. "So she had to tell you," she said. "Isabella, she had to tell you. Somebody had to tell you that your daughter was good at her job." Isabella pressed the back of her wrist against her mouth for a second. "Do you know what that's like? To find out the best thing that ever happened to me in my career happened because a woman you were sleeping with mentioned it in passing. That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened. You just told me that's what happened." "Isabella." Claire stepped forward. "Please, sit down. Let me—" "Fourth," Isabella said. And she said it quietly, and something in her face had gone from hot to cold, and Claire felt the floor start to go. "Fourth, there were 11 photographs in that envelope. 10 of them were from November." Isabella reached into her coat and put something on the table. "This one's from March." Nobody moved. "It's a printout of the phone log," she said. "Moretti distribution outbound March 4th. To a restaurant on Wabash. 90-second call. There's a handwritten note on it. Want to know what it says?" Claire couldn't speak. "It says ask her how long she's known." Dante's voice when it came was very low. "Isabella, give me that." "It's a phone log, Dad, it's not a bomb. Give it to me and go home, and I will explain every part of this to you in an hour, and I am asking you as your father to trust me for 60 minutes. "No." It came out of her at full volume, and it stopped the room. "No, you don't get 60 minutes. Somebody put an envelope on my desk, and it's the second worst thing that's ever happened to me, and you're both standing there with the same face." She turned on Claire. "You knew who he was, before the gala, didn't you?" "No." "Claire, no is, I swear to God I didn't know he was your father until you said his name. But he knew yours." Silence. "Oh my God," Isabella said. "Isabella? He knew your name and you found out that night, and neither of you said one word to me for 6 weeks." She was crying now, and she was furious about it, wiping at her face with the back of her hand like it was an insult. "Say what it was. Somebody in this room say the actual sentence." Claire's voice came out in pieces. "Evan tried to do a deal with your father's company in the spring," she said. "He used my name in it. He put me in a folder as his partner. Your father's office ran a check on me in March and had a car outside my building for 6 nights in June, and he told me all of it at the gala 40 minutes after we met, and he did not have to tell me, and that is why I trusted him." Isabella stood absolutely still. "Evan," she said. "Yes. Evan, who I drove a van across the city for at 3 in the morning. Evan, who I sat with you in a parking lot about for 4 hours in February while you threw up in a garbage can. That Evan came back, he came back in March, and you've known since October. I was going to, and you didn't call me. I was protecting you." And Isabella Moretti laughed. It was the worst sound Claire had ever heard. "No, you weren't," she said. "That's what he used to say to you, word for word. You told me that in the parking lot. You told me he said I'm protecting you every single time he took something away from you, and you swore, Claire, you swore that you would never let anybody make a decision about your life without you in the room." Claire couldn't breathe. "And then you did it to me," Isabella said. Isabella. Dante's voice had gone quiet in a way Claire had never heard, and she understood distantly that this was the sound of a man begging. "Look at me. Don't. Look at me, please." She looked at him. "I made her keep it from you," he said. Claire's head snapped around. "That's not—" "I made the decision. She wanted to tell you the first week, and I said Thursday, and then I said after the audit, and then I said after New York, and every single time it was me." He didn't take his eyes off his daughter. "So be angry at her for whatever she did. But that particular thing was mine." Isabella looked at her father for a long moment. "You're lying to cover for her," she said. "Right now, in front of me. You're still doing it." "Isabella, that's the whole thing, Dad. That's the entire thing." She pulled her coat closed with both hands. "You two decided. Again. Just now, in this room with me standing here, you decided which version I get. Please?" Claire reached out. Isabella stepped back from her hand. It was a small movement. It took half a second. Claire would see it for months. "You didn't betray me by loving each other," Isabella said. Her voice was completely steady now, and that was the part that broke it. "You betrayed me by lying to me." "Isabella, I would have been happy for you." She was already at the door. "That's what nobody said out loud yet, so I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to leave. I would have been happy. If you'd told me in the first week, in the first month, I'd have made a joke about it, and I'd have been weird for 2 days, and then I would have been so happy for both of you that I'd have cried in the car." She got the door open. "Instead, I found out from a stranger," she said, "in an envelope, with my father's phone records." "Isabella." Dante's voice cracked on it. "Where are you going?" She stopped in the doorway. "You know what the worst part is?" she said. "I'm the one who put his number in her phone. At the coat check, I did that. I said he always picks up." She laughed once wetly. "I said that about my own father, to somebody else. And then she was gone, and the door didn't even slam." It clicked softly, the way doors do when the person closing them has run out of anything to throw. Claire stood in the middle of her own apartment and did not move for a long time. "Claire? Don't. Claire, listen to me. Don't." She turned around. Her face was wet, and her voice was somewhere down in the bottom of her chest. Somebody put an envelope on her desk. Somebody had photographs from November 19th and a phone log from March. Do you understand what that means? Dante's jaw was set like stone. "Yes," he said. "Say it." "Somebody has been watching us since before we started." "No." Claire's hands were shaking, and she let them. "Somebody has been watching me since March, and he waited 9 months. And when he finally used it, he didn't come after me, and he didn't come after you." She pressed her palm flat against her sternum, hard, the old trick, "You're still in here. He went after the only person in this city I would have burned the whole thing down for." She picked her phone up off the counter. "What are you doing?" Dante said. "What I should have done in October." She dialed 3 digits, put it to her ear, and when the voice on the other end asked what her emergency was, Claire Bennett said in the clearest voice she'd used all year, "My name is Claire Bennett. I want to file a stalking report against Evan Cross. I have 9 months of it. and I'm going to need somebody to write down every single word." The detective's name was Anita Reyes, and she wrote down every single word, and it took 4 hours and 11 minutes. And at the end of it, Claire understood something she had not understood at the beginning. "That's it," Claire said. "That's it for today. I gave you 9 months. You gave me 9 months of a man being careful." Reyes capped her pen. "That's not me being dismissive. That's me telling you what you're dealing with because you're going to hear a lot of soft nonsense from a lot of people this month, and I'd rather be the one who doesn't." "Say it then." Every message came from a different prepaid number. "The photograph of your door has no metadata, which means he stripped it, which means he knew to strip it. The envelope on Miss Moretti's desk had no prints, not his, not anybody's, which is its own kind of interesting. He's never touched you. He's never threatened you in a sentence a lawyer can't unbend." Reyes looked up. "You know what he did on November 19th in that parking structure? Took photographs. Took photographs of 2 adults standing in a public place. That's legal. It's disgusting. And it's legal, and every version of that sentence is going to come out of somebody's mouth in a courtroom eventually." Claire sat back. "So I've got nothing." "You've got a pattern," Reyes said. "Patterns are slow. They're not nothing. They're just slow, and slow is a horrible answer to give a woman who hasn't slept since October, and I'm sorry that it's the true one. What do I do in the meantime? Write everything down. Time's not feelings, the feelings won't help you, and they'll wreck you to reread. Don't answer him. Don't block him either." "Why not?" "Because a blocked man escalates to find a new door," Reyes said. "An unblocked man who gets no response starts performing for an empty room. He'll get sloppier, and he'll get louder, and one day he'll do something with his actual face attached to it. That's the day I can help you." Claire stared at her. "You're telling me to wait for him to get worse?" "I'm telling you what the law can currently reach," Reyes said, "and I'm telling you I'll be reachable at 2 in the morning, which is not standard, and which you should not repeat." Dante was in the hallway outside the district station when she came out, and he had been there for 4 hours, and he had not come in. "Why didn't you come in?" "Because it's your report." "You could have sat in the hallway anywhere." "I could have," he said. "I sat in this one." Claire stopped walking about 6 feet from him and made herself say it standing up because she knew that if she got in a car with him, she wouldn't say it for another week. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not fix it." "All right. I'm not doing this. Us, not now." Dante's face didn't change. She hated that. She wanted it to change. "Because of Isabella," he said. "No. Claire, it's not because of Isabella. It's because of what you did in my apartment." She pressed her hands flat against her coat. "You looked your daughter in the face, and you took the whole thing onto yourself. You said I made her keep it from you. And it wasn't true, and you said it in half a second without blinking, and it was good. It was a good lie. It was the best lie I've ever heard anybody tell. I was trying to... I know exactly what you were trying to do. That's the problem." Her voice came apart, and she pushed it back together. "You decided in that room with me standing right there which version of the story she was going to get. You made a decision about my life in a half a second because you thought it would cost me less." Dante said nothing. "And here's the part that's mine," Claire said. "I let you. I stood there and I let it happen, and for about 2 seconds I was relieved, Dante. I was relieved that somebody else was going to carry it. Do you know what that is? That's the feeling. That's the exact feeling from 4 years ago. It came right back like it had been waiting in a drawer. I'm not him. I know you're not him. Then, that's what makes it dangerous. It came out of her too loud in a public hallway and she didn't care. If you were him, I could see it coming. You're kind. You're actually kind, which means when you take something away from me, you'll do it gently, and you'll do it right, and I won't notice for a year." Dante looked at the floor for a moment. "How long?" he said. "I don't know." "Give me a wrong number then. Give me something I can be angry at." "I can't. Claire." And his voice did something then, a small crack, the sound of a very controlled man discovering a hairline fracture. I've had exactly 2 people in 11 years who talked to me like I was a person. One of them stopped answering my calls on Thursday. Don't. He stopped himself. I'm not going to finish that sentence, he said. Finish it. No. Because it's a hand on your arm and it's dressed up as grief, and you'd have stayed, and then in a year, you'd have known why. And that right there was the single worst part of the whole thing, and Claire had to walk away from him fast before he saw what it did to her face. She did not go home. She went to Bridgeport, and she stayed until the sun came up, and at 6 in the morning, she wrote 3 words on a legal pad and underlined them. Open in March. The kitchen had been running out of a building on borrowed time since 2014. A lease that renewed month to month, a service that fed 400 people and could feed 1,200 a room, the foundation had been embarrassed about for so long that nobody had ever put a date on it. Claire put a date on it. March, she told the staff. March what? March 14th. We reopened the whole thing. Full service, both windows, no utility bill, no address requirement, no forms. And it's public. Press, neighbors, everybody. We put our name on it. Yolanda raised her hand. You don't have to raise your hand, Yolanda. Habit. She put it down. Are we allowed to ask if you're okay? No. Okay. March 14th, Claire said. Get me the volunteer list. Isabella did not answer her phone. Claire called on Friday and left nothing. She called on Sunday and left 11 seconds of breathing before she hung up. On Tuesday, she wrote a message that took her 40 minutes and said, in the end, I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I'm going to keep showing up in the places where you'd be, and you can decide what to do about that. Isabella read it. She didn't answer. 9 days later, Claire walked into a foundation quarterly review, and Isabella was sitting at the far end of the table with a folder open in front of her, and she looked up and she said, Chef Bennett. The whole room heard it. Miss Moretti? You've got 15 minutes. Start with the supplier consolidation. I've read the rest. And that was how it went. For 2 months. Isabella Moretti was flawless and prompt and completely available in every professional capacity, and she called Claire Chef Bennett in front of 11 people, and she never once, not a single time, said anything to her when the room was empty. Claire took it. She took it the way you take a bill you actually owe. Once in a stairwell, Isabella said, Your numbers are good. Thank you. That's not a compliment. It's a fact I'm allowed to say. I know. Okay, Isabella said, and kept going down the stairs. The old ways came for Dante Moretti in January in the shape of a man named Sal Ferraro, who had worked for his father and had never once in 30 years asked permission to enter a room. You want me to say it, or you want me to just do it? Sal said. Say what? Cross. No. Dante. I said no. He put paper on your daughter's desk. Sal's voice was mild, which was the frightening part. Not on you, not on the woman, on Isabella. And you're going to sit there and let a refrigeration salesman make that his opening move. He's not going to touch her. He already touched her. That's what the envelope was. Sal spread his hands. 2 nights. That's all I'm asking. He goes somewhere quiet, he has a conversation, and then he moves to Arizona and starts a landscaping business. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody even gets scared well. He gets scared. And then what? And then it's over. No Sal. Then it's over for a while. And then in 9 months, he's in Arizona telling people he was run out of Chicago by the Morettis, and one of those people is a federal prosecutor's cousin, and then it's not over. It's the beginning of something with my name on it and my daughter's name under it. Dante's hands were flat on the desk. And that's the practical answer. You want the other one? Not really. I promised her I'd tell her first. Sal stared at him. You promised the chef. I promised Claire Bennett that if Evan Cross came at me in any form, I would tell her before I did anything about it. Before, not after. And she left you anyway? Yes. So the promise is over. That's not how promises work, Dante said. That's how deals work. I've been confusing the two my whole life, and I'd like to stop while I still have anybody left. Sal Ferraro was quiet a long moment. Your father would have had him in a car by Tuesday. My father died at 61 with 2 people at the funeral who weren't paid to be there, Dante said. I've thought about that more than he'd have liked. The volunteer list came back on the 2nd of February, and Claire found it at 10 at night, alone with a cup of coffee, going cold at her elbow. 206 names. Sign-in sheets going back to September, the paper kind, because the foundation had never digitized them and nobody had ever cared. November 11th. Evening shift. Dish pit. E. Cross. Claire put the sheet down. Then she picked it up again because she needed to be sure, because the mind will do anything to get out of a room like that. E. Cross. Printed, not signed. Neat block letters. 3 hours logged. A phone number that turned out when she called it to be a dry cleaner on Archer. She went back through the stack with both hands. December 2nd. Dish pit. December 19th. Dish pit. January 6th. Delivery unload. She called Reyes at 11:40 p.m., and Reyes picked up on the second ring exactly as promised. He was in the building, Claire said. Say that again slower. He signed a volunteer log 4 times, under his own name, in block letters. He washed dishes in my kitchen for 3 hours on November 11th, and nobody looked twice, because nobody ever looks at the volunteer sheets, and on January 6th, he unloaded a truck. Claire's voice was doing something strange, flat, and fast at the same time. Detective, on January 6th, I was standing on that dock. I was on that dock for 2 hours. He was 40 feet from me, and I never turned around. Claire, breathe out. He wants me to find this. Yes, Reyes said. He does. He printed his name. Why? Because a man who wanted to hide would use a different name, and a man who wanted to hurt you would have used yours. Papers moving on the other end. This is a message. He's telling you the distance is his to choose. So what do? You bring me every sheet tomorrow at 8, Reyes said. And Claire, this is the sloppy I told you about. This has his handwriting on it. This is the first thing you've given me I can actually hold. She told the staff at 6 the next morning, all 11 of them, and she did it plainly, because she had decided somewhere around 3 a.m. that she was done being the only person in a building who knew things. His name is Evan Cross. He's 34. He was engaged to me for 4 years, and I left him in the fall of the year before last. She held up the photograph Reyes had printed. He has been in this building at least 4 times as a volunteer. He may be on our list under other names. I don't know. Yolanda said, That's Nate. The room went silent. What? I'm not that's Nate. Yolanda's hand had come up to her mouth. Chef, that's Nate. He's been here since fall. He's real nice. He brought donuts on New Year's. He signed E. Cross. He told me Nate. Marcus Vale had gone very still at the back of the room. He asked me about the door code, Marcus said. Claire turned. When? December. He said he came early some mornings and didn't want to bang on the roll-up and wake the neighbors. Marcus's jaw was working. I told him it was 4119. Marcus. I told him the code chef. The man's voice broke on it, this man who had stared her down on a loading dock at 5:40 in the morning without flinching. He was polite. He carried stuff. He asked about my knee. Look at me. I gave a man the code to your... Marcus. Claire crossed the room and put herself in front of him. Look at me. You did not do this. You were kind to somebody who was pretending to deserve it, and that is the only crime here, and I have committed it worse than you, and for 4 years. She turned to the room. New codes today. Every door. Nobody gives them to anybody, including me, over the phone. If somebody calls and says they're me, hang up and dial my number back. And if it's Mr. Moretti, somebody said. Claire's throat tightened. Especially if it's Mr. Moretti, she said. She paid for the security system herself. That was the thing she would be least able to explain to anybody afterward, and the thing she was proudest of. $11,400. Nearly everything she'd saved toward a lease of her own for cameras on both docks. A panic system with monitored dispatch and a duress code word which the installer asked her to choose while standing in the hallway with a tablet. "It should be something you'd never say by accident," he said, "but something you could say in a normal sentence if somebody was listening." Claire thought about it for 4 seconds. "Check the north hallway," she said. "That's a long one." "It's the one." Dante found out about the $11,400 11 days later because Dante found out about everything eventually, and he called her for the first time in 7 weeks. "You spent your lease money. Good evening to you too." Claire. "It's my kitchen," she said. "You agreed to that in writing at 5:40 in the morning." "I agreed you'd run it. Not that you'd fund it out of a savings account for a restaurant you've been drawing on napkins since culinary school." "How do you know about the napkins?" "Isabella," Dante said, and they both went quiet because it was the first time either of them had said her name out loud to the other since December. "Is she okay?" "She's magnificent," he said. "She restructured the Halloran contract and got us a better rate than I ever got, and she told me about it in an email. 11 lines. Signed Best I Am." "Oh, Dante. Don't." "Okay. Let me pay you back for the system." "No. It's a foundation asset. It's literally a foundation asset. It's bolted to a foundation wall. If you put money on that wall, then every time I look at it, I'll know whose it is," Claire said. "And on the night I'm scared, I'll think about you instead of about what I'm doing. I need it to be mine, even if it's stupid, especially if it's stupid." Dante was silent for a while. "All right," he said. "That's it. That's it. You told me the rules the first night, and I've broken enough of them." A pause. Claire. "Yeah. March 14th. What about it? Am I allowed to come?" And Claire stood in a hallway, with her forehead against a cold door, and found that she had to wait several seconds before she could answer. "You're allowed to stand in the back," she said. The other shoe dropped on the 28th of February, and it dropped the way she should have expected, which was quietly in an email with the subject line, "Governance Time Sensitive." Grantham Pike had called for a special meeting of the Foundation Board. The item on the agenda was the removal of the executive director of the Bridgeport facility for cause. The cause was 3 paragraphs long and used the phrase "undisclosed personal relationship with a principal donor" twice, and the phrase "material misrepresentation in the hiring process" once, and attached to it as an exhibit in a nonprofit board packet were 4 of the 11 photographs from the parking structure on November 19th. Claire read it standing up in the middle of the kitchen and had to put her hand on the counter. "Chef, I'm fine." "You don't look—" "I'm fine, Yolanda." She got outside. She called Reyes. "He got to Pike," she said. "Slow down. Grantham Pike, board member, $200,000 a year. I threw him out of my dining room in front of 4 people in November, and he called it extraordinarily unprofessional." Claire's hands were shaking with something that had stopped being fear about 40 seconds ago. "He's got the photographs. Detective, he has the photographs. He's put them in a board packet." "Where did he say he got them?" "Concerned party. Get me the packet. Get me the metadata on whatever file Pike received if he'll give it up, which he won't, and get me the name of whoever couriered it." "Anita." "Yeah." "He's not trying to scare me anymore," Claire said. "He's trying to take it. He's trying to take the kitchen." "Yeah," Reyes said. "He is. That's a man moving from watching to acting. I've been waiting 4 months for him to do that, and I need you to hear the second half of that sentence, which is that it's also the most dangerous he's ever been." The board met on the 4th of March. Claire was not allowed to speak. That was a rule she hadn't known existed until 11 minutes before, when a woman with a clipboard explained that staff attended at the pleasure of the chair, and the chair had not extended pleasure. So she sat in a hallway. For 50 minutes. Isabella came out first. She stopped when she saw Claire. She had a folder under her arm, and her jaw set, and she looked for one unguarded second exactly like her father. "Don't get up," she said. "What happened?" 7-4. Claire's stomach dropped. 7-4 which way? You're still the director. Isabella's voice was clipped. Pike moved for removal. He got 4. The vote's not close, and he knows it, and he's already talking about a follow-up motion in June. Claire put her face in her hands for a second. Who spoke for me? Mrs. Adeyemi, the one who said good at your door in November. She talked for 9 minutes, and it was extraordinary, and she used the phrase, a photograph of a woman standing in a parking garage 4 times until 3 people couldn't look at the table anymore. And you? Isabella's chin came up. I abstained. Claire didn't say anything. I abstained, Isabella said again louder, like Claire had argued. Because I'm his daughter and your friend, and if I'd voted, Pike gets to say the whole thing's a family operation, and that's exactly the sentence he's been building toward since December, and I was not going to hand it to him. That was the right call. Don't do that. Do what? Don't tell me I did the right thing like you're proud of me. Isabella's voice cracked straight through the middle. You don't get to be proud of me. That's not one of the ones you still have. Claire nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Okay. Isabella turned to go, got 4 steps, stopped. He was in the room, she said without turning around. Who? My father, in the back. He didn't say a word for 50 minutes. Her shoulders came up. Do you know what that costs him to sit in a room while a man like Grantham Pike says your name in that voice and say nothing? He looked at me before the vote, Isabella said. That's all. He didn't ask. He just looked at me, and then he looked at the floor. And I've spent 11 years wanting my father to ask me for something, and it turns out I can't stand it. And then she was gone down the hall fast, and Claire sat in a plastic chair outside a boardroom and cried for the first time since December. Dante called her that night, and the first thing he said was, I'm telling you before. Claire sat down on her kitchen floor. Okay. I know who sent the envelope. Say it. His name is Denny Rourke. He was a dispatcher at distribution for 19 years. A pause. He's one of the 4. Claire closed her eyes. The payroll errors. His wife's been in treatment since 2021. It's not $400 a month. It's closer to $9,000, and I've been carrying it since the 2nd year, and he doesn't know. I know that he knows. Dante's voice was very steady and very tired. He pulled the March phone log. He pulled the reference check. He's the one who told Cross that you existed, and he did it before any of this in the spring for $800, because a stranger told him it was a routine business inquiry, and he needed $800. Dante. And then in November, the stranger came back and said, I know what you did in March, and I know what Moretti does to people who sell his paper. And Denny Rourke put an envelope on my daughter's desk, because he was more afraid of me than he was of anything else in the world. Something in his voice gave. He was more afraid of me. After 19 years and $9,000 a month, and I have never once raised my voice to that man. Claire pressed her hand against her sternum. You told me a thing at the beginning, she said quietly, about why you never let anybody know you were carrying them. Because the second it's known, it's a currency. Yeah. I said that like a man who'd thought it through, Dante said. I hadn't. I just decided it was noble to keep secrets, and never once asked what it does to a man to be helped in the dark by somebody he's terrified of. What are you going to do? And this was the moment. Claire knew it while it was happening. She held the phone with both hands. That's why I'm calling, Dante said. Before, not after. Okay. Sal wants him gone, not hurt gone out of the state done. And that's the merciful version. And it took me 2 hours to talk myself out of the merciful version, and I'm not going to pretend it was easy, or that I'm a good man for it. And I want to tell Denny Rourke that he's not fired, that his wife's coverage doesn't move, and that he's going to sit down with your detective on Monday and say every word of it out loud. Claire couldn't speak for a second. "He'll be a witness," she said. "He'll be a witness who took $800, which means Cross's lawyer will eat him alive, which means it's a bad play. Sal's right about that. It's the worst possible move in the actual game we're in." "Then why?" "Because I've spent 30 years being the reason people are afraid to tell the truth," Dante said. "And I would like one time before I die to be the reason somebody does." Claire sat on her kitchen floor. "Do it?" she said. "You're sure?" "I'm not sure of anything. Do it anyway." Denny Rourke talked to Detective Anita Reyes for 6 hours on the 9th of March. It gave them the March phone log with a name attached to it. It gave them the November approach, which was extortion, which had a statute. It gave them a burner number Cross had used in a parking lot in Cicero, and a second one. And it turned an unhandsome pile of patterns into something with a shape. It was not enough to arrest him. "Not yet," Reyes said. "It's enough for a warrant on the phones. It's enough that if he does one more thing, I'm not asking a judge, I'm calling one. And in the meantime, you open your kitchen on Saturday," Reyes said, "and I'll be in the parking lot in an unmarked car eating something terrible, and you will not look at me once." 280 people came on March 14th. That was the number Claire held on to afterward. Not the speeches, not the news van, not the alderman who came for 11 minutes and left. 280 people ate off real plates. There were 2 dishwashers. The second one had already broken. Rosa Delgado ran the donation intake and made 3 separate people cry with the efficiency of her clipboard. Ruthie Owens came from the church on 51st and stood at the front and said a blessing that was 90 seconds long and had exactly 1 sentence about God in it, and 11 about Marcus Vale, who spent the entire thing looking at his shoes. Isabella came at 6. She didn't come to Claire. She went straight to the line, put on an apron, and worked the second window for 2.5 hours without stopping, and every time somebody called her Miss Moretti, she said Isabella and kept ladling. Dante stood in the back. He stood in the back the entire time. He didn't take a tray, he didn't shake a hand, he didn't say one word to a single donor. And when a photographer from a neighborhood paper drifted toward him, he moved sideways behind a column with the practiced ease of a man who had spent his life not being in frames. At 7:40, Claire came out of the kitchen to look at the room. At 7:41, Yolanda touched her elbow and said, "Chef, there's a guy at the end of the line asking for you by name." "Which name?" Yolanda's face did something. He said, "Tell Claire it's Nate." Claire's whole body went cold, and then very strangely warm. She had thought about this for 4 months. She had rehearsed 11 versions of it in her car, and in the actual second, what she felt was not fear at all. It was a terrible clarifying calm, like a fever finally breaking. "Yolanda." "Yeah." "Go to the office. Pick up the desk phone, not your cell. Call the monitoring company on the sticker and tell them in exactly these words, 'Chef Bennett says to check the north hallway.'" Yolanda's eyes went wide. "Chef, don't run. Walk normal. Say the words exactly. Then find Marcus and tell him doors." "What about you?" "I'm going to go talk to a man in front of 280 witnesses," Claire said. He looked good. That was the thing nobody ever tells you. "Hey, Bear," Evan said. "Don't call me that." "Sorry. Habit." He smiled. He had a tray in his hands. He'd gone through the line. "This is great, by the way. This is really, I mean it. You did this. Why are you here?" "I volunteer here." "You don't volunteer here. I'm on the list." He said it pleasantly. 4 times. Ask anybody. I did dishes. I'm good at dishes, remember? You always said I was the only man in America who could load a rack properly. Evan? I brought donuts on New Year's. Evan, you look tired, he said, and his voice changed. Got softer, got warmer, got concerned. And Claire felt 4 years of her life try to climb back into her body through her spine. You look really tired, Claire. Are you sleeping? You get like this. You take on the whole thing, and you don't sleep, and then you get sick in April. You need to leave. I'm eating. You need to leave. You need to. It's a public meal service with no address requirement. He tilted his head. You wrote that policy. I read it. It's very you. It's the most you thing I've ever read, actually. Anybody. No forms, no questions. He took a bite. So, which is it? Anybody or anybody except me. Claire's hands had stopped shaking. She noticed it distantly, the way you notice weather. Say what you came to say, she said. I came to eat. Evan, there are 280 people in this room, and I am not going to make a scene, and you knew that when you walked in, which means you didn't come here for a scene, so say it. And Evan Cross set his tray down. Okay, he said, and his face changed. You didn't do this, he said. Excuse me. This. He gestured at the room without looking at it. You didn't do this. A man with $100 million did this and put your name on the door because you're what did Pike call it? Photogenic community leadership. He smiled again, and it didn't reach anything. That's the actual sentence, by the way. That's in the board packet, page 2. You gave Pike the photographs. Pike is a donor. Pike had concerns. You gave Pike the photographs. I gave a member of a nonprofit board information relevant to the governance of that nonprofit, Evan said, which is a thing that a private citizen is allowed to do, and which 4 lawyers have now confirmed to me in writing. But sure, let's say I did. You put my best friend's father's phone records in an envelope. I put the truth in an envelope. It came out of him fast and hot, and then he pulled it back in visibly, and it was the most frightening thing Claire had ever watched a person do. Sorry, this is a lot. Seeing you is a lot. Leave. You know what I actually can't get past, he said. It's not him. Everybody thinks it's him. It's not. He leaned a little closer and dropped his voice into the register he'd used for 4 years, the one that used to arrive right before the reasonable part. It's that you had to find another one. That's the part. 4 years you told me you couldn't do things by yourself, the lease, the loan, the car, Claire. You couldn't buy a car without me in the room, and then you leave. And what do? 14 months, and you're standing in a room some rich man bought you. Is that it? You need powerful men, Evan said. You've always needed powerful men, because you cannot survive alone. And the whole room seemed to go very quiet, though later Claire would learn it hadn't. That the noise had gone on exactly as before, and it was only inside her head that everything stopped. She thought about the walk-in that had been running 11 degrees warm since June. She thought about $11,400. She thought about a chair under a doorknob. Evan, she said. What? I survived you before I ever met him. His face did something she had never seen it do in 4 years. I left you in September, Claire said. I got out with 2 bags and no car and $1,100, and I lived in Isabella's second bedroom for 5 months, and I got a job on a line at 31 years old, like a kid out of school, and every single hour of that was mine. You weren't there. He wasn't there. Nobody was there. That's the part you can't stand, and you've spent 9 months trying to build a story where somebody else did it, because if I did it alone, then everything you ever told me about myself was a lie. And you'd have to be a man who said those things on purpose. That's not... You're not the worst thing that ever happened to me, Claire said. You're the thing I got out of. Those aren't the same, and I'm done letting you upgrade yourself. Evan Cross stood very still, and then he said quietly, Isabella's here tonight, isn't she? Claire's blood turned to water. She looked good at the vote, he said. I saw the packet photos. She's got her father's... Don't. I'm just saying she abstained. That's interesting. That's a very interesting thing for a daughter to... Say her name again? There it is, Evan said, delighted. There you are. And Claire understood with total clarity that she had exactly one job left in this conversation, and it was to keep him talking for 90 more seconds. You've been in this building 4 times, she said. 5. 5. There's one you didn't find. He was smiling now. Actually smiling, and there was something loose and lit up behind his eyes that Claire had seen exactly twice in 4 years and had spent 4 years arranging her entire life to avoid. January 22nd. Nobody signs the sheet on Sundays. Why? Because you had a bag on the counter, and I wanted to know if you still put the keys in the side pocket. He shrugged. You do. Should. Claire didn't hear the doors. She heard the room change the specific drop in the hum that she had felt one time before at a gala in November, and she knew before she turned that Dante Moretti was moving. He came down the side of the room fast, and he did not look like a man at a charity dinner. Dante. He didn't hear her. She could see it. There was nothing behind his face at all, nothing but 30 years of a thing he had spent a decade trying to put down, and Sal Ferraro was 4 steps behind him, and Sal Ferraro was not moving fast, which meant Sal Ferraro was moving to arrive, and Claire understood in one horrible flash exactly how the next 90 seconds could go, and exactly what it would cost every single person in that room. She stepped in front of him. Stop. Move. Dante, stop. Move, Claire. Look at me. And he did. He stopped 4 feet from Evan Cross, breathing hard, with 180 pounds of the man he used to be sitting on his chest, and he looked at her. I don't need you to destroy him, Claire said. He was in your... I know what he did. I know all of it. I know more of it than you do. Her voice was shaking, and she didn't care. I don't need you to destroy him. I need you to trust me. Claire. Say it back to me. He put his hands on my bag, and if you touch him, he wins. She grabbed the front of his jacket with both hands in front of 280 people, and she did not care about that either. Listen to me. He has 4 lawyers and a board member and 9 months of doing everything just barely legally, and he has been waiting for this. He came here for this. Not for me, for you. He wants 1 photograph of Dante Moretti's hands on him, and then it's never a stalking case again, it's a Mafia case forever, and I'm the woman in it, and Isabella's the daughter in it, and the kitchen closes in April. Dante's chest was going like a bellows. Trust me, Claire said. I don't know how. I know. Claire, I have never once in my life. I know. Her forehead was almost against his. Start now. Start right now in front of everybody badly. Nobody's good at it the first time. And Dante Moretti, who had a man 4 feet away who had photographed his daughter's desk, who had a lieutenant behind him, waiting for a word that would have taken half a second, put his hands down. He put his hands down at his sides, and he stepped back. Sal, he said. Boss. Go stand by the north door and don't do anything. Boss, don't do anything. Evan Cross watched all of it, and Claire, turning back to him, still shaking with her hands still open, saw him realize that he had spent 9 months building something and it had just failed in front of him, and she saw the exact moment he decided it didn't matter. Huh, he said. Look at that. You should go. You know what's funny? I really did think he'd hit me. He picked his tray back up. That was the whole plan. It was a good plan, Bear. Don't call me that. I'll see you Thursday, Evan said. And that was the sentence. Not the photographs, not the volunteer sheets, not the door code or the bag on the counter, or 9 months of prepaid numbers. I'll see you Thursday. Because Detective Anita Reyes had been standing 11 feet away for the last 4 minutes with her badge in her hand and an unmarked car in the lot, and a warrant application on a judge's desk that had needed exactly one thing. A statement of future intent made in front of witnesses by a man who had already been told in writing to stop. Mr. Cross, Reyes said. Evan turned. Chicago Police, put the tray down. I'm what? Put the tray down, sir. I'm a volunteer. You're on a volunteer log 4 times, and you just told this woman you'd see her Thursday in front of about 40 people who heard you, Reyes said. And there's an order of protection with your name on it that was served on the 6th of January, and I've got you on that log twice since. That's 2 counts before we open your phone. That's... Evan's voice went up. That's a misunderstanding. That's a Claire. Claire. Tell her. Claire looked at him. Tell her? Evan said. I already did, Claire said. For 4 hours, in December. She wrote down every word. They took him out through the north hallway because the north hallway had no step down, and because Claire had said so, and because it was her building. The room was very quiet for about 11 seconds. Then Ruthie Owens, 73 years old in the front row with a plate of chicken in front of her, said at full volume, "Well, that was better than the alderman." And 280 people laughed, and the noise came back, and somebody dropped a fork, and Yolanda came out of the office with the desk phone still in her hand, and burst into tears, and Marcus Vale went and stood by the north door where Sal Ferraro was standing and said, "You want a plate?" And Sal Ferraro said, "Yeah. Actually, yeah." Claire got about 4 steps toward the kitchen before her legs stopped working, and she sat down on a folding chair in the middle of her own dining room and put her head between her knees. Somebody sat down next to her. She knew who it was without looking, because she had known this person's breathing since culinary school, since Lion, since a rented van at 3 in the morning. "Don't talk," Isabella said. Don't talk. This isn't a thing. I'm not saying anything to you. I'm just sitting here." "Okay." "You're shaking." "Yeah. That's normal." They sat there. "You called the monitoring company?" Isabella said. "Not him." "Yeah." "You told Yolanda to walk?" "Yeah." "And you stood in front of my father." Isabella's voice went strange. "You stood in front of him and told him to trust you in front of everybody, and he did, Claire." My father put his hands down. I have never in my entire life seen him put his hands down. Claire lifted her head. Isabella wasn't looking at her. She was looking at the room at the line, and the 2 windows, and the real plates, and Rosa Delgado's clipboard, and the second dishwasher that was already broken. "I'm still angry at you," Isabella said. "I know. Like really angry, months of it. I've got about a year of it in me." "I know. But I'm not leaving tonight," Isabella said. "That's all this is. That's the entire thing I'm offering, so don't make it into more than it is." Claire nodded and couldn't speak, and Isabella pretended not to notice, and both of them sat on folding chairs in the middle of 280 people eating dinner off real plates. And across the room in the back, where he had been standing all night, Dante Moretti stood alone with his hands empty at his sides and did not come any closer, and did not say a word, and Claire looked up once and found him already looking at her, and what was in his face was not triumph, and it was not relief, and it was not love exactly. It was a man who had finally understood at 48 years old that the woman across the room had never needed anybody to save her. She had needed somebody strong enough to stand still. The statements took until 2 in the morning. Claire gave hers in a room with a bad table, and then Yolanda gave hers, and then Marcus Vale gave his, and said the words, "I gave him the door code," 11 times, until Reyes finally stopped writing, and said, "Sir, you have to stop confessing to being nice." Ruthie Owens gave a statement that ran 19 minutes, because she wanted it noted for the record that the young man had eaten 2 pieces of chicken. And at 2:10 in a parking lot, Dante Moretti opened a car door for Claire, and Claire didn't get in. "I'm going to drive myself," she said. "Claire, I know what tonight was, and I know what you did, and I know what it cost you." Her keys were in her hand, and she was gripping them so hard the teeth were printing into her palm. "And if I get in that car right now, I will fall asleep on the way, and I will wake up in front of my building, and I will feel taken care of. And I have spent 9 months learning that the feeling arrives before the problem does." Dante closed the door. "All right. Say something else." "There isn't anything else. You told me the rules the first night." He put his hands in his coat pockets. "Text me when you're inside." "That's a leash?" "That's 40 seconds of my life I'd like to spend not imagining a stairwell," Dante said. "Negotiate it down if you want. I'll take a word. I'll take a period." Claire's mouth went crooked. "Fine," she said. "You get a period." She sent him one at 2:41 a.m. He sent back nothing at all, which she understood correctly to be him keeping his end of it, and she sat on her kitchen floor and cried about a punctuation mark for 11 minutes. Evan Cross was released on Sunday afternoon on a $100,000 bond with an ankle monitor and a 2,000-foot exclusion zone that covered the kitchen Claire's building and the block her therapist's office was on. Reyes called her before the news did. "I want you to hear it from me, and I want you to hear the whole thing before you react. He's out. He's out. That is not a failure. That is what happens to a 34-year-old with no record and 4 lawyers, and the monitor is real, and the zones are real, and if he crosses one, there's no discretion, it's automatic." Anita: "Yeah." "Is he going to prison?" "Ask me in 90 days. "Ask you now. Now." Reyes exhaled. "Now I've got 2 counts of violating an order of protection, which is a misdemeanor and a half, and a stalking count that lives or dies on the phones. Everything real is in the phones. And I don't have the phones yet. I have a warrant and a lab and a queue, and the queue is 19 weeks long, unless somebody makes a phone call." "Who makes the phone call?" "Nobody you want to owe," Reyes said. "Don't. I mean it, Claire. Do not let anybody speed this up for you. I would rather wait 19 weeks for evidence nobody can put a smudge on than get it Tuesday and spend a trial explaining who paid for the smudge." "I wasn't going to." "You weren't. He might." Claire went very still. "I'll handle it," she said. She called him from the walk-in, which was now running at a correct temperature, and had been since January, and which had become absurdly the place she went when she needed a room with a door. 19 weeks, she said. "Hello to you too. 19 weeks on the lab queue, Dante. Reyes told me. And I know exactly how many people you know, and I know exactly how fast it could be 4 weeks instead, and I am calling you before because that's the rule, and it goes both ways now." There was a pause on the line. "I already made the call," Dante said. Claire's stomach dropped. "I made it on Friday, 20 minutes after they took him out. I called a man I have known for 22 years who could have had that phone imaged by Monday morning." A pause. "And then I sat in a parking lot and thought about it for an hour, and I called him back and I said, forget it." "Why?" "Because you'd have found out," Dante said. "Not this year. In a courtroom in 11 months when a defense attorney said the words expedited at the request of and turned around and looked at you. And you'd have known that everything you built somebody handed you at the end." Claire leaned back against a shelf of onions. "Say the rest," she said. There's rest. There's always rest with you." "And because I wanted to," Dante said. "That's the rest. I wanted to make that call more than I've wanted anything in a decade. Sitting in that parking lot, my hands were shaking with how much I wanted it. And I've spent 30 years telling myself I'm a careful man, and it turns out careful is just what I look like when nobody's touched anything of mine." Claire closed her eyes. "Thank you for calling him back," she said. "Don't thank me." "Why not?" "Because I want to be thanked," Dante said. "And that's the exact thing I'm trying to get out from under." Chad. The phones came back in 5 weeks, not 19, because a lab technician in Joliet had a slow month and a sense of proportion, and Reyes called Claire at 7:40 on a Tuesday morning and said, "Come in, not to the station. There's a diner on Halstead. Bring somebody." That's not a sentence you say when it's good news. It's not good news. It's not bad news either. It's the third kind. Claire brought Isabella. She hadn't planned to. She'd stood in the kitchen with the phone in her hand for 4 minutes, running down the list of people, and the list was short, and at the top of it was a woman who had not had a personal conversation with her in 91 days. Isabella picked up on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Reyes wants me at a diner and she told me to bring somebody." "What time?" 9. "I'll be there at 8:40, Isabella said, and hung up, and Claire stood there holding a dead phone and had to put both hands on the counter. Reyes put a folder on the table and put her hand flat on top of it. Before I open this, she said, you are going to want to do something after you read it. I'm asking you to wait 48 hours before you do it. Just open it. Claire. 48 hours. Fine. Open it. Reyes opened it. He kept a file on you, she said. Since 2019. Not since you left. Since the second year you were together. Isabella made a sound. There's a spreadsheet, Reyes said. Tabs by year. Your schedule, your mileage, what you spent, who you called. There's a tab called Isabella that starts in 2020, and it is 31 rows long. 31. He tracked how often you saw her. He graphed it. Reyes turned a page. It goes down for 2 years, and then in September of the year you left, it goes straight up, and he wrote a note on that row. You want it? Yes? It says is the problem. Fix is. Isabella sat back so hard her chair scraped. Oh my God, she said. That's not the part I brought you here for, Reyes said. There's a worse part. There's an earlier part. Reyes slid a printed page across the table. Milwaukee 2016. Her name is Danielle Okafor. She was engaged to him for 2 years. She filed for an order of protection in November of 2016 and withdrew it 11 days later and moved to Green Bay in the spring. Claire didn't touch the paper. Why did she withdraw it? I don't know. I called her Friday and left a message and she hasn't called back, and that's her right, and I want to be very clear with both of you that it stays her right. There's a spreadsheet tab for her, Claire said. It wasn't a question. Reyes hesitated. There's 4, she said. The diner went on around them. Somebody's plate clattered. 4 women, Claire said. 4 tabs. 2 of them are 11 rows and go nowhere. 1 is Danielle. 1 is you. Reyes closed the folder. And now you know why I asked for 48 hours. Claire's hands were flat on the table. You think I'm going to call her? I think you've already got the area code memorized, and I've been watching you not look at that page for 90 seconds, which is the most self-control I've seen out of you since December. She might not know it's still happening. She knows. She might not know it happened to somebody else. And that was the sentence that did it. Claire heard it come out of her own mouth and felt the whole architecture of 9 months rearrange itself. Anita. For 4 years, I thought I was the only person on earth stupid enough to end up in that house. 4 years. And the only thing that ever made it survivable was Isabella walking into a parking lot in February and saying this happened. It was real. I saw it. Her voice was shaking. That woman moved to Green Bay by herself in 2017, thinking she was the only one. Isabella put her hand over Claire's on the table. First time in 91 days. 48 hours, Reyes said. That's all I'm asking. Not because I don't want you to. Because if you call her today, you'll do it crying and she'll spend the whole call taking care of you. And she's had enough of that. Claire waited 51. She called from the office off the loading bay with the door shut and a page of notes she never once looked at, and a woman with a careful voice answered on the 4th ring and said, "Hello," like it was a question about whether she should have. Ms. Okafor, my name is Claire Bennett. I'm in Chicago. I was engaged to Evan Cross from 2019 to the fall of the year before last, and I'm not calling to ask you for anything, and you can hang up right now, and I will never call you again. There was a very long silence. Okay, Danielle Okafor said. That's it. That's the whole call. I found out on Tuesday that you existed, and I have been sitting with the fact that I spent 4 years believing I was the only person on the planet who was dumb enough to... Don't. Sorry. No, don't say that. Her voice came up. Don't say dumb. You're not allowed to say that on this phone call. I've got a rule. Claire laughed, and it came out wrecked. Okay, she said. You got out 14 months ago. Well, 20 now. Are you safe right now today? He's got an ankle monitor and a 2,000-foot zone. Oh, Danielle said, and then softly, oh, somebody actually did it. Yeah. Somebody actually, I want you to know I tried. In 2016, I tried. And I sat in a room with a man who asked me if there'd been any physical incidents, and I said no, and he wrote it down. Like that was the end of the I know. And I withdrew it because my mother said I was ruining a nice man's life. I know. Do you have a lawyer? Not an actual one, a good one. I have a detective who picks up at 2 in the morning. Keep her, Danielle said. They talked for 55 minutes. At the end of it, Danielle Okafor said, "Give me her number." And then before Claire could say anything at all, Don't do the grateful voice. I'm not doing it for you. I'm 41 years old, and I have wanted for 9 years to be a person who did something about it. Claire hung up and sat on the office floor and did not move for a long time. Then she got up and made 280 dinners. Grantham Pike filed his second motion in June. It was cleaner than the first one. He'd learned. There were no photographs in it. There was a 2-page memorandum about reputational exposure, a paragraph about pending criminal proceedings involving the executive director's personal history, and a proposed resolution to place the Bridgeport facility under interim management pending review. "He's not trying to fire you anymore," Isabella said. "He's trying to make the building his." Why? Because it's the only thing in the foundation that's actually working, and he sits on 3 boards, and this is the only one anybody's heard of. And if he can put his hand on the good thing, he can spend the rest of his life telling people at dinners that he saved it. Isabella flipped a page. "Also because you humiliated him in front of 200 people, and men like Pike do not have a category for that. Can he win? He has 4 votes. He needs 6. So no. So no unless something changes." Isabella closed the folder. Something's going to change. He's not stupid enough to file twice without knowing something's coming. She was right on the 14th of June at 4:20 in the afternoon when a process server walked into the lobby of the Moretti Hotel and handed Dante Moretti a subpoena. Evan Cross's defense had listed him as a witness. "Tut, they can't do that," Claire said. "They can absolutely do that." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that he's alleging his ex-fiancee's romantic partner is a member of an organized criminal enterprise who has been improperly influencing a police investigation," Dante said. "That's not a defense to stalking. It's not meant to be. It's not even meant to be believed." "Then what's it for?" "It's for the headline." His voice was perfectly level, which she had learned to read as the worst sign there was. "It's for 4 days of local news with the words Moretti and mob and charity kitchen in the same sentence. It's for a jury pool that reads those 4 days. And it's for Grantham Pike, who is going to hold that clipping up at the next board meeting and say, 'I raised this concern in February.'" Claire sat down. "He's going to get his 6 votes. He's going to get 8. Dante. And there's a second thing, and I'd rather you hear it from me in a kitchen than from a lawyer in a hallway." He set his phone face down. "If I take that stand, they get to ask me questions under oath. Any question that goes to bias, which means my business, which means the foundation's transfers, which means 22 years of things I have spent my whole life keeping in a room with no windows. Then don't testify. It's a subpoena. Then take the 5th. "I can take the 5th, Dante said. "And here is what happens when I do. A television camera outside a courthouse films a man in a good coat refusing to answer whether he's ever ordered violence, and every juror in that box goes home and thinks about it. And Evan Cross's lawyer stands up the next morning and says, 'Ladies and gentlemen, this was never a case about a man sending text messages. This is a case about who Claire Bennett chose to sleep with.'" Claire couldn't breathe for a second. "So he wins," she said. "Maybe. He wins from a house with an ankle monitor." "He might," Dante said. "That's not the part I need to say to you." "There's a part?" "There's a part." He looked at his hands. "I've been sitting with it since Thursday, and I'd like to get through it without you interrupting me, because I've rehearsed it 4 times, and I lose it every time in the middle." Claire went quiet. "He's right," Dante said. He's not. Claire, he's right. That's the thing. His jaw moved. Not about the influence. I never touched the investigation, and I turned down the one call I could have made, and I'd say that under oath tomorrow. But the shape of what he's saying is true, and I've known it since March, and every time I've looked at it, I've found something else to do. What shape? You built something clean, Dante said. It's the only genuinely clean thing anywhere near my name in 22 years, and it has my name on the letterhead. And as long as it does, every enemy I've ever made has a free shot at it, and every reporter who ever wanted a Moretti story gets to take it out of the mouths of 280 people eating dinner. Claire's throat closed. Don't, she said. You don't know what I'm going to. I absolutely know what you're going to say, and I'm telling you not to. I'm resigning from the foundation, Dante said. Dante. All of it. The board seat, the chair, the naming. I'm putting the endowment into an independent trust with a board I don't pick and don't sit on, and I'm signing over the Bridgeport building outright, and I'm doing it before that subpoena is worth anything to anybody. Claire stood up so fast the chair went over. That's your wife's. The word landed like a dropped pan. Say that again, Dante said quietly. That's Elena's. Isabella told me. She started it in 2011 in the hospital. She wrote the first bylaws on a legal pad. It's got her handwriting in the files, Dante. I've held the pages. Yes. And you're going to hand it to strangers because a man in an ankle monitor filed a piece of paper. I'm going to hand it to strangers, Dante said, because it's 11 years old, and it has never once in 11 years been safe, and I've been calling that protection. Claire put her hand over her mouth. There it is, he said. Don't. No, say it. You've been waiting 6 months to say it. He didn't raise his voice at all. I kept it under my name, so nobody could take it. That's what I told myself. And what it actually meant is that every person in that building has been standing inside my weather their entire lives, and not one of them got a vote about it. Marcus, Yolanda, Rosa, 280 people who came in for dinner in March and got a police action instead. That wasn't you. That was entirely me, Dante said. He didn't come to the kitchen for you. He told you that himself. He came for me. She found out 4 days later that he had told Sal Ferraro on the same afternoon, and that Sal Ferraro had listened to the whole thing standing up and had said one sentence and had gone home. What was the sentence? Claire asked. Your father built the first one out of a truck. That's it. That's it. He's 68 years old, and I've known him since I was 9, and he said 8 words and put his keys on my desk. Is he? He's fine. He's not in danger, and neither am I. That's not what it is. Dante rubbed the bridge of his nose. He gave 30 years to a thing, and he watched me start giving it away, and he can't stay to watch the rest, and I can't ask him to. Are you going to be all right? No, Dante said. But I've been all right for 30 years, and look at it. Isabella found out from a lawyer, which was the last mistake Dante Moretti made that year. She came into the hotel office at 9 at night without knocking and put a document on the desk. Explain this. Isabella, trustee designate I, Moretti. She read it off the page in a voice that was shaking so hard it barely held the words. I got a call from a man named Alan Pruitt asking me to confirm my middle name for a trust instrument. My middle name, Dad. That's how I found out you're dissolving Mom's foundation. I'm not dissolving it. You're giving it away. I'm giving it to you. You're giving it to a board. To a board you chair with 7 seats, you feel that I am legally barred from sitting on funded in perpetuity out of an instrument I cannot revoke. Dante stood up. I picked the one structure on earth where I can never take it back. That's the entire point of it. That's the only thing about it that I'm proud of. Isabella stood there with her hands opening and closing. You did it again, she said. You decided. Again. In a room without me. Her voice broke wide open. That's my mother's. That's the only thing left in the world with her handwriting on it, and you sat down with a lawyer, and you moved it, and I found out because a stranger needed to confirm my middle name. Dante didn't say anything for a moment. Then he came around the desk and did something Claire would only hear about later and would think about for the rest of her life. He sat down, not behind the desk, in the chair in front of it, the one visitors used so that his daughter was standing over him. "You're right," he said. Isabella's mouth opened. "You're completely right, and there's no version where I'm not, and I'm not going to give you the reasons because the reasons are good and they'd work, and that's exactly what's wrong with them." He put his hands on his knees. "I've done it your whole life. I decided which version you got when your mother was dying. I decided you weren't ready for the business at 24, and I never told you that's what I'd decided, so you spent 6 years thinking you weren't good enough. And I decided this on the 12th of June at 4 in the afternoon alone in 11 minutes. Stop. And when Claire asked me last October why I'd never given you anything, I didn't have an answer, and I've had 8 months to build one, and I still don't. Stop. Ask me for something," Dante said. Isabella stared at him. "What?" "Anything. Right now. Ask me for something and I'll say yes before you finish the sentence, and it will not be a gift and it will not be guilt, it'll just be the first time you asked, and I said yes." His voice was completely level and completely undefended. "I've never once let you need me out loud. That's the actual thing I did to you. Everything else is paperwork." Isabella Moretti stood in her father's office for 11 seconds, and then she said in a very small voice, "Play the thing Mom liked." And Dante Moretti, who had been offered the entire architecture of his life to negotiate with and had expected to lose a building, got up and went to the piano on the mezzanine and played badly slowly for 40 minutes, while his daughter sat on the far end of the bench with her shoes off and cried and did not once apologize for it. Koi. Isabella came to Bridgeport at 6 the next morning. She came in through the loading door because she knew the new code, because Claire had given it to her personally in April, in an act neither of them had ever discussed. "He sat down," she said. "What?" "My father. He sat down in the chair, like a person waiting for an appointment, in his own office." Isabella's eyes were swollen, and she clearly did not care. "I've spent 11 years wanting him to look up at me, and it turns out I just needed him to look up." Claire put down the box she was holding. I'm not done. I've got a thing, and I'm going to say it badly." Isabella's jaw was set. "You asked me in March what I wanted from you, and I said nothing, and that was a lie, so here it is. In December, I wasn't angry that you were with my father. I told you that, and it was true. I was angry because—" She stopped. "Say it." "Because he told you." It came out of her in a rush. "He told you about the payroll families. He told you about Rose's daughter. He told you he didn't know how to talk to me. He told you that Claire—" He said it out loud to a woman he'd known for 6 weeks, and I found out about it from you. And it turns out my father is not a locked door. He's just a door that was never locked for me." Claire sat down on a crate. "Oh, And I couldn't say it in December because it sounded like a child. It sounded like a 30-year-old woman jealous that her dad had a girlfriend. It doesn't sound like a child. It sounds like somebody who lost her mother at 17 and got a man in a suit instead of a father for 11 years and then watched a stranger get him in 6 weeks." Claire said. "That's not jealousy. That's a bill. That's a bill coming due, and you've been carrying it by yourself since you were 17. Isabella put her face in her hands. "I'm still angry," she said, muffled. "I know. I've got about 4 more months of it in me minimum." "Take 6. Don't be generous, that's worse." "Then I'll be honest," Claire said. "I'm going to tell you the true one, and then I'm going to go take a delivery. Ready?" Isabella looked up. "I didn't lie to you in December to protect you," Claire said. "I've been saying that since December because it's the sentence that lets me sleep. Here's the real one. I lied to you because I was terrified that if you knew you'd make me choose, and I already knew what I'd choose, and I couldn't stand for you to see it." The kitchen was very quiet. Wow, Isabella said. Yeah? No, that's the real one. You wanted the real one. I did. Isabella wiped her face with the back of her wrist. God, it's so much worse. I know. Which one would you have chosen? And Claire said without any hesitation at all, you. Isabella's head came up. That's what I couldn't stand, Claire said. Not that I'd have picked him, that I'd have picked you and lost him and spent the next 30 years being fine about it, in a way you'd have had to watch. Isabella stood there for a long moment. Then she said, I'm going to hug you now, and it doesn't mean anything. Understood. It means nothing. It's a physical event. Completely meaningless, Claire said, and Isabella Moretti crossed a loading bay and held her best friend for a full minute while a produce truck idled outside, and neither of them said one more word about it, then or ever. The resignation went out on the 1st of July. It was 4 paragraphs long. It thanked nobody. It explained nothing, and it did not contain the words Evan Cross or legal proceedings, because Dante Moretti had cut both from 3 consecutive drafts. Let them guess, he said. They'll guess wrong. They'll guess loud. Wrong takes a week. Loud takes a day. The story ran on the 3rd. It was smaller than everybody feared. It said a Chicago hotelier had transferred a family foundation to an independent trust, chaired by his daughter. And it used the phrase, long-rumored ties, once in the 7th paragraph, and it did not have a photograph of the kitchen in it. Grantham Pike withdrew his motion on the 8th of July. He did not withdraw it because he'd lost. He withdrew it because there was nothing left to take. No Moretti seat to inherit, no conflict to allege no donor relationship to be scandalized by, and a new trust instrument that made his $200,000 a year exactly as important as anyone else's $200,000 a year. He resigned from the board in a 2-line email in September and joined the board of a symphony. That's it, Yolanda said. He just leaves. That's it. After all that, that's what happens to men like Pike, Isabella said. Nothing. Ever. It's the most infuriating fact about the world, and I'd like everyone to make their peace with it by Thursday. And on the 14th of August, the defense withdrew its subpoena of Dante Moretti because a man with no board seat, no foundation, and no financial relationship to the complaining witness's employer was no longer a headline. He was a 50-year-old who had once had dinner with her. Reyes called Claire from her car. They pulled it. I heard. You understand what he did? Yeah. No, I don't think you do, so I'm going to be crass for 1 second. Reyes's voice was hard. A man burned down 11 years and his dead wife's name to take one piece of paper off a table. I've been doing this 19 years, Claire. I have never seen a defendant lose a witness because the witness made himself boring. Evan Cross took a plea on the 2nd of October. Not because of the phones, though the phones were bad. Not because of Denny Rourke, whose $800 got exactly the treatment on Cross that Dante had predicted. He took it because on the 9th of September, a woman named Danielle Okafor drove down from Green Bay and gave Anita Reyes a statement that ran 4 hours, and then 2 of the other names on 2 of the other tabs called Reyes in the same 11 days. And because of a doctrine with a boring name that lets a prosecutor show a jury that a man has done a thing before. 2 years with a term of probation and a permanent order of protection. Claire read her impact statement herself. She wrote it in one sitting on the office floor, and she did not let a lawyer touch it. She did not say you ruined my life because he hadn't. She said, you told me for 4 years that I could not survive on my own. I want the record to show that I did, and that I have the receipts, and that they are extremely boring. $1,100, 2 bags. A job on a line at 31. A room in a friend's apartment for 5 months. A kitchen. A dishwasher I bought myself. And she said at the end, looking at the judge and not at him, he is going to tell people in there that a mafia boss put him here. I'd like it noted that 4 women put him here, and 3 of them had never met each other, and 1 of them drove down from Green Bay on a Tuesday. She and Dante did it slowly. That was the part nobody would have made a movie about. There was no scene. There was a conversation on the 22nd of July that took 2 hours and consisted almost entirely of Claire Bennett reading aloud from a list she'd written in a notebook. 1. You don't pay for anything of mine. Not the lease, not the equipment, not a truck, not a lawyer. Not ever, not once, not as a surprise. Agreed. You're agreeing too fast. I've had 8 months to know that one was coming. 2. If I'm in trouble, you ask me what I want before you do anything, even if it's stupid, even if you're right. Agreed. 3. Claire turned a page. This one's harder, and it's not about protecting me. If you're in trouble, you tell me. Same rule. You don't handle it, and then present me with a finished thing so I never have to be scared. Dante didn't answer immediately. That one costs me something, he said. I know. That's why it's on the list. You understand that being the person who never needs anything is the only real skill I have. Yeah, Claire said. It's also the reason your daughter thought you were a locked door for 11 years, and the reason Denny Rourke was more afraid of you than of a stranger with an envelope. That's not a skill. That's a tax, and everybody around you has been paying it. Dante sat with that for a long moment. All right, he said. 4. She closed the notebook. This is the last one, and it's the only one I'm not sure I can hold up on my end. Say it. You don't get to be the safe place. He looked up. I don't understand. I know, nobody does. It's a bad sentence, let me try it again. Claire pressed her palms together. For 4 years, Evan was the whole weather. Everything I did against him or around him. And when I left, I promised myself the next thing I built would be built in good weather. Not against anybody, for its own sake. And you're better weather. But you're still weather. Her voice caught. If I let you be the safe place, then in 5 years, everything I have will still be a thing I did because of a man. A different man. A kind one. And it'll still be the answer to the question, who was in the room. Dante was quiet. So what do I get to be? He said. You get to be a person I chose on a Tuesday for no reason, Claire said, when I was already fine. He looked at her for a long moment. That's the whole list. That's the whole list. Then I have one. Claire blinked. You have one? I have one, and I've had it since January, and I'd like to put it on the record before you take it off the table by being reasonable at me. Dante folded his hands. When you're doing the thing, you do the thing where you decide something's yours, and you carry it alone until your hands bleed. I get to say out loud that I've noticed. Not fix it, not fund it, say it. Once. Then I shut up, and you do whatever you were going to do anyway. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. That's a good one, she said. I know, I've had 8 months. Fine. Say it properly. Agreed, Claire said, and put out her hand, and Dante Moretti shook it, and then neither of them let go for a while, which was in the end the entire romantic climax of the summer, and both of them would have described it as sufficient. Good. She resigned as executive director on the 11th of November. She told Isabella first in the office off the loading bay, with a spreadsheet open between them. You're leaving. I'm leaving in March. 16 weeks notice, which is insane. And I'm doing it because I want the handoff done properly. And because I've watched this building lose 3 directors in 14 months. And I'm not going to be the 4th thing that happened to Yolanda. Isabella didn't say anything for a second. Is it money? It's not money. Because the trust can... Isabella... I know. I'm asking as the chair, not as... She stopped. Okay. Why? Claire turned the spreadsheet around. Because we're at 1,140 meals a week, both Windows 94 on inspection, and the walk-in has been at 38 degrees for 10 months. Because Marcus runs the docks, and Rosa runs intake, and Yolanda has been running the second window for 6 months without me in the building on Tuesdays, and nobody noticed until I told them. She tapped the screen. It doesn't need me. That's the whole thing. It needed me in March, and it doesn't need me in November. And if I stay because it feels good to be needed, I'll start making it need me. I've seen how that's done. I lived with a professional. Isabella looked at the numbers for a long moment. You're going to open your own place. I'm going to try. With what money? $11,400 less than I had a year ago, Claire said, and a bank and a folder of napkins. Claire, don't. I wasn't going to offer. You were absolutely going to offer. I was going to offer slightly, Isabella said, in a way you could refuse gracefully, and I want credit for the restraint. Noted. Can I say something as your friend and not as the chair? Yeah. You're going to be terrible at this for about a year, Isabella said. The bank part, the lease part, all of it. You're going to sit in rooms with men who talk to you like you're a hobby, and you're going to come home and be furious, and there's going to be at least one night where you sit on your kitchen floor. Probably. And I'm going to be there, Isabella said. Not with money, with the van, the one from 3 a.m. I still have it. Claire had to look at the ceiling for a second. You kept that van. Of course I kept the van, Isabella said. It's the only genuinely good thing I've ever owned. Claire told Dante on a Sunday night, standing up in a kitchen, because she'd learned in a parking lot in December that she said the hard ones better on her feet. I'm leaving the foundation in March. I'm going to open my own place. I don't have a location, I have half the money, and the bank's going to laugh at me twice before somebody doesn't. Dante didn't say anything. That's it, Claire said. That's the announcement. You can react now. I'd like to use my one. Claire's stomach flipped. Go ahead. I've noticed, Dante said, that you've been carrying this alone since January, that you've had a folder in your bag since January, that you took $11,400 out of it in February and never once said the word lease out loud again after that in 8 months to anybody including me. Claire's eyes stung. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. That was my one. He picked up his coat. Now I shut up, and you do whatever you were going to do anyway. Dante, I'm not offering. I know you're not. I want to be extremely clear because you're going to lie awake tonight wondering. He turned around at the door. I'm not going to offer. Not next month, not when the bank says no the second time, not in February when you're $4,000 short and you're doing that thing with your thumb on your purse. I'm going to sit in a chair and watch you do it, and it is going to be the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, and I'm going to do it right because it's the only gift I've got left that's actually worth anything. Claire stood in her kitchen with her hand over her mouth. Why? She said. And Dante Moretti, who had spent 30 years believing that love was a wall you put around a thing, and 11 months learning it was a chair you sat in and stayed in, said the truest sentence of his entire life. Because when I met you, I thought you needed protection, he said. And it took me a year to understand that protection was just the nicest word I had for a cage. The first bank said no in 11 minutes. Claire had prepared for 90. She had a folder with tabs. She had 3 years of Bridgeport numbers, a personal statement, a build-out estimate from a contractor who had actually walked the space, and a page at the front that said in 12-point type 140 meals per week at $1.42 per plate. The man across the desk looked at page 1 for 4 seconds. This is nonprofit. That's operational history. It's nonprofit operational history. You've never run a P&L with a rent line on it. I ran a $1,400 a week produce budget down to $900 without cutting a single meal. Somebody else's produce budget, he said, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. Ms. Bennett, I'm going to save you the hour. You're a 5-year restaurant, no franchise, no partner, 41%, down on a build-out in a neighborhood with no comparable. My underwriters see that file at 9 on a Monday, and they don't finish the first page. Then let me talk to your underwriters. That's not a thing that happens. Why not? Because they're in Charlotte, he said. Claire got to her car before she let her hands shake, which she counted as a personal record. Then she sat in a parking lot on Cermak for 20 minutes and did what Reyes had taught her to do. In December, she wrote down times, not feelings. 9:04 in, 9:15 out. Reason given, no comparable, no partner, 41% down. Then underneath, because she was only human, he didn't turn page 1. The second bank took 9 days and said no in a letter. The third bank said maybe for 6 weeks, and then said no on a Friday afternoon at 4:50, which Isabella called the coward's hour, and which Claire agreed with completely. "Okay," Isabella said. "What's the actual number?" "Don't. I'm not offering, I'm doing arithmetic. There's a difference, and you're going to have to learn it eventually." 94,000. That's the gap. That's the gap after the equipment auction, and after I got Ron to float me 60 days on the first 2 orders, which took 2 calls and a threat. Claire pressed her thumb into the seam of her purse. "And I have until the 4th of March, because the space has a second bidder, and the broker told me that in a voice, that means it's true." "Which space?" 51st and Wallace. Old Fish Market. It's been empty since 2018. Isabella went quiet. "That's 4 doors from Ruthie's church," she said. "Yeah, that's on purpose." "That is extremely on purpose," Claire said. Sus. Dante Moretti spent the 4th of February sitting in a chair. He would tell Claire about it a year later, and she would make him tell it twice. He had a phone in his hand and a number on the screen. Not a bank. He didn't know any banks the way he knew other things. He knew a man who owned 19% of a bank, which was better and worse. He sat with his thumb over the name for a long time. Then he put the phone face down on the arm of the chair, and then he picked it back up, and then he stood up and walked to the window and put it in a drawer across the room, which he was aware was the behavior of an alcoholic, and did not care. At 11 at night, the drawer was still closed, and Sal Ferraro let himself in without knocking, because Sal Ferraro had never once in 30 years asked permission to enter a room, keys on the desk or not. "You look terrible." "Hello, Sal. Your girl's short." Dante didn't move. "Where'd you hear that?" "Marcus Vale told Rosa. Rosa told Ruthie. Ruthie told a woman at the church who cleans for a family on Ashland, and the family on Ashland uses my cousin's linen service." Sal sat down heavily. "You people think information moves through banks. It moves through churches and laundry. Always has. I'm not calling anybody. I know. I mean it. Dante, I know." Sal put his hands on his knees. "That's why I'm here. I came to sit with you so you don't do it." Dante turned around. "You gave me your keys in June." "Yeah, and I've had 8 months to be a 68-year-old man with nothing to do. And I want you to understand that I hated every single day of it." Sal's jaw worked. "You know what I figured out? I wasn't mad you gave it away. I was mad you didn't ask me first. 30 years and you decided in a room." "Sal, everybody in your life says the same sentence to you, and you keep thinking it's 4 different problems." He pointed at the drawer without looking at it. "It's in there, isn't it?" "Yes." "Give it here." "No." "Dante." "If you hold it, then I didn't do it, you did," Dante said. "That's not the same as not doing it. That's just outsourcing it, which is the entire thing I've been doing my whole life." Sal Ferraro sat back. "Huh," he said. "What?" "Nothing. Your father would have never in 100 years. Sal reached over, picked up the television remote, and turned on a game neither of them cared about. "Sit down. We're going to watch the Hawks lose, and you're not going to open a drawer." They did that until 1:40 in the morning. At 1:40, Sal stood up, and at the door he said without turning around, "When she opens it, I'm going to come eat there." "Sal, and I'm going to pay," he said. "You understand what I'm saying to you? I'm going to pay like a customer, and she's going to give me a check, and I'm going to leave a tip, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of my life, because that's the only way I know how to say sorry to a woman like that." The gap closed on the 18th of February, and it did not close the way anybody planned, and Claire nearly threw it away. It started with Yolanda knocking on the office door with an envelope. "What's this?" "Don't open it here." "Yolanda." "Chef, I'm asking you. Take it home." Claire opened it in her car in the lot, because she had never once in her life done what somebody told her with an envelope. There was a bank check in it for $31,400 and a sheet of notebook paper with 46 names on it. She sat there for a full minute, unable to make her eyes work properly. Marcus Vale, $2,000. Rosa Delgado, $600. Yolanda Pierce, $1,150. Ruthie Owens, Church Fund, $4,300. Voted 31-2. Ron Kirchner, the supplier, the man she'd threatened over the phone in a hallway, $5,000. Mrs. Adeyemi, the board member who had said good at her door and talked for 9 minutes at a vote, $8,000. Danielle Okafor, Green Bay, Wisconsin, $2,500. At the bottom in Yolanda's handwriting, nobody asked him, nobody told him. Check it if you want, we knew you would. Claire got out of the car. She walked back into the kitchen, and there were 11 people standing at the pass not pretending to work, and she said in a voice she barely recognized, "No." Nobody moved. "No, absolutely not. Yolanda Marcus Rosa has a daughter, Rosa. You have a..." Rosa's got a kid with a seizure disorder and $900 a month of medication, and she put in $600, Yolanda said. "Yeah, we know. We had a whole conversation about it, and she told 2 people to mind their business, and I'm gonna let her tell you herself, because if you say that sentence about Rosa in front of Rosa, I'm leaving the room. I can't take this." "Why not?" "Because..." "No, seriously. Why not?" Yolanda's arms were crossed hard. "Say the reason out loud. Because I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks and I want to hear you say it." Claire opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "You want to know what I think it is," Yolanda said. "I think you got a rule, and the rule is nobody's allowed to give you anything ever, because one time a man gave you things and it turned out to be a bill, and you've been living inside that rule for 2 years, and it kept you alive, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you it was wrong." "Yolanda, but you didn't ask us." Yolanda's voice cracked, and she plowed straight through it. "That's the thing you keep saying, right? That's your whole thing. Ask me first, don't decide for me. Don't hand me a finished thing. You said that to Mr. Moretti in a boardroom. I heard you." "That's different." "It is not different, and you know it's not, because we asked each other, Chef. 46 people asked each other in a room with a coffee pot, and Ruthie's church took a vote 31-2, and if you send it back, you're not protecting anybody. You're just telling 46 grown adults they don't get to decide what to do with their own money." The kitchen was completely silent. Marcus Vale cleared his throat. "I put in 2,000, he said. "Marcus, that's everything I had that wasn't the truck." He looked at the floor, then made himself look up. "Chef, in June of the year before last, I broke a walk-in on purpose so I could steal food out my own job, and you stood on that dock at 5:40 in the morning, and you didn't call the police on me. You made me a manager." His voice was going. "I got a nephew in Rockford asked me what I do. I tell him I run the docks at the biggest kitchen on the south side. That's a sentence I get to say." "That's yours." Claire put her hand over her mouth. "Take the money," Marcus said. "It's not... It ain't charity, and it ain't a favor, and it ain't a man buying something." He wiped his face with the back of his wrist, angry about it. "It's 46 people putting their name on you. That's all it is. That's the only thing it is." She called Isabella from the parking lot, crying so hard she had to say it 3 times. "Pay attention. 31-4. Is Ruthie's church. They took a vote." Okay. Breathe out. Not in. Out. Don't do his thing." "It's a good thing it works." Isabella's own voice was thick. "Claire, listen to me. Are you listening? I'm going to say the thing you need, and then you can go back to falling apart." "Say it." Help you asked for, and help 46 people voted on in a room with a coffee pot, is not the same species of thing as a man buying your car, so you can't leave the house," Isabella said. "It's not a smaller version. It's not a nicer version. It's a different animal, And you have been unable to tell them apart for 2 years, and I've been waiting for something to show up that was so obviously the good one that even you couldn't argue with it. Claire sat in her car with her forehead against the wheel. I'm still 94 short. Was. You're 62.6 short. That's still... Call the bank in Charlotte, Isabella said. What? You said the underwriters were in Charlotte. So call Charlotte, not the branch, not the nice man with the desk. Find the actual underwriting office and call them and tell them a chef with 46 community investors and a signed letter from Mrs. Adeyemi wants 6 minutes. That's not a thing that happens. That's what the guy at the desk said, and the guy at the desk is a guy at a desk, Isabella said. You made Ron Kirchner open his truck twice. You made a $200,000 donor put a camera back in a bag. Call Charlotte. It took her 11 days and 9 phone calls and 1 email to a woman named Priya Raghavan, and on the 1st of March, the fourth bank said yes for $62,600 at a rate that made Claire laugh out loud in a hallway. She signed the lease on the 4th of March with 90 minutes to spare, and a broker who kept saying, "You got very lucky," until Claire finally said, "Mr. Alvarez, I have been doing this since November. Please stop saying that word." Then she drove to the hotel, went up to the office, and stood in the doorway. Dante looked up. "Did you call anybody?" Claire said. He set the pen down. "No. Not the bank, not a friend of the bank, not a man who owns part of a... No. Not Ron, not Adeyemi, not Priya Raghavan in Charlotte, North Carolina." "I don't know who that is," Dante said. "And no." Claire stood there. "I'm going to check," she said. "Good." She blinked. "That's it. Good. That's it. Check every one of them. Call Charlotte and ask if anyone called on your behalf and give them my full legal name so they can search it properly." He picked the pen back up. "If you don't check, you'll spend 11 years wondering, and one day at a dinner party, somebody will make a joke and you'll go cold. Check now. Get it over with." Claire made 4 phone calls over the next 2 days. Priya Raghavan in Charlotte laughed and said, "Ma'am, if a Chicago hotelier had called me about your file, that file would be dead. That's not a compliment to you, it's just how compliance works." Ron Kirchner said, "Nobody called me. I put in $5,000 because you cost me 19%. And I've made it back 4 times on the volume, and also because I liked getting yelled at by somebody who'd done the homework." Mrs. Adeyemi said, "Young woman, I am 76 years old. I do not require a man's permission to write a letter." And Danielle Okafor said, "Claire, nobody called me. I read about the kitchen in a Chicago paper in September, and I have been waiting 5 months for somebody to give me an address." Claire hung up and sat down on the floor of an empty fish market on 51st and Wallace with dust on her hands, and cried in a way she had not cried at any point in the previous 2 years, because it turned out the hardest thing to survive was not the man who had told her she couldn't do it alone. It was finding out how many people had been waiting to be asked. She handed Bridgeport over on the 28th of March. She did it in 1 day, which everybody told her was a mistake, and which she did anyway because she had watched 3 directors leave that building in a slow bleed, and she was not going to be a 4th ghost in a hallway. "Yolanda Pierce is your executive director," she told the room. "Effective at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'm out at 4:01. I'm not coming back for 6 months. 6 months. 6 months. I won't come to the building. I won't come to the meetings. And if you call me with a problem, I'm going to say, 'That sounds like a question for the director,' and hang up on you like a psychopath. And you're going to hate me for about 9 weeks. Yolanda's hands were shaking. "Chef, I'm 24. You're 25 in June, and you've been running the second window without me on Tuesdays since August. That's different. It is not different, and here's the thing I'm going to say once and then never again." Claire came around the pass. 2 years ago, you were the only person in this building with the nerve to raise a hand and tell a brand new director to her face that the last one lied about firings. Everybody else stood there and said, "Whatever you want, chef." You didn't. She held Yolanda's eyes. "That's not a personality trait. That's the entire job. What if I break it? You'll break something, probably in the first month. Claire pulled a piece of paper out of her apron. That's why there's this. What is it? Every mistake I made here in order with dates. Claire pressed it into her hand. 19 of them. Number 4 is that I moved dinner service to 5:45 before I told the volunteers, and I lost 11 of them in a week and had to beg 4 of them back. Number 11 is that I bought 1 dishwasher when I should have bought 2. Number 19 is that for the first 5 weeks I thought the staff were being difficult, and they weren't. They were waiting to see if I'd still be here in March. Yolanda looked down at the list. Why are you giving me this? Because the last 3 directors left you a clean office and a locked drawer, Claire said. And I'd rather leave you the truth. At 4 o'clock, Marcus Vale rang the service bell 11 times for no reason anybody could explain, and Rosa Delgado made a speech that was 4 sentences long and mostly about clipboards, and Ruthie Owens said a blessing. At 4:01, Claire Bennett walked out the north hallway because there was no step down. She kept her word about the 6 months. It nearly killed her twice. On the 19th of April, Yolanda called about a supplier, and Claire said, "That sounds like a question for the director," and hung up, and then sat in a truck in a parking lot and shook. On the 2nd of June, Yolanda called at 11 at night and said, "I'm not asking, I'm reporting I fired somebody today and I did it wrong and I fixed it." And Claire said, "Okay," and hung up and cried into a dish towel. Bridgeport did 1,190 meals a week that summer, 50 more than Claire had ever done. "I want to be so clear that I'm happy about that," Claire said to Isabella. "You are not happy about that." "I am 90% happy about that." "You're 60, Isabella said. "And I want to tell you that the other 40 is disgusting, and I want you to know that I would feel exactly the same and worse." The letter from Evan Cross arrived in July, forwarded twice, and Claire recognized the handwriting from 4 feet away. She put it on the counter and looked at it for 2 days. "You gonna open it?" Isabella asked. "I don't know." "You want me to open it?" "No." "You want me to burn it? Because I would love to burn it. I've been waiting 2 years for somebody to hand me something of his that's flammable." Sorry. Claire opened it on a Sunday morning with a cup of coffee going cold at her elbow. It was 4 pages. It was an apology. It was, she would later say, the best apology anyone had ever written to her, better than her mother's, better than anything Dante had ever managed, better than anything she could have written herself. It named things. It named the car in 2020. It named the lease she hadn't signed and the job in Portland she hadn't taken. It used the word frightened about her and the word ashamed about him. It said, "I understand if you never respond" on page 1 and again on page 4. Claire read all 4 pages twice. Then she put them down and said out loud to an empty apartment, "He wants a conversation." She sat with that for a long moment. Because the terrible thing, the thing that took 2 years and $191 an hour and a woman in Green Bay to see clearly, was that the letter might also be true. It could be sincere all the way down and still be a hand on a door. She called Reyes. "Do I have to report this?" "You don't have to. You can." "What happens if I do?" "It's a written contact from a party under an order of protection, so it's logged, and it's a technical violation, and it will absolutely affect a parole hearing." A pause. "And if you don't, nothing happens, and nobody in the world will ever know, and that's a real option too, and I'm not going to make it for you." "What would you do?" "I'd report it," Reyes said. "But I'm 19 years into being tired, and you're 2 years into being free, and those produce different answers, and both of them are correct." Claire reported it. Then she did the second thing, which took her longer. She scanned all 4 pages and emailed them to Danielle Okafor with one line. "He sent this. I'm reporting it. I don't need you to do anything. I just didn't want you to hear about it from somebody else in 9 months." Danielle called 40 minutes later. "He sent me one in 2018, she said. Claire closed her eyes. "Was it good?" "It was magnificent." Danielle's laugh was awful. 3 pages. Named the thing with my sister's wedding. I read it 11 times, and I called my mother, and my mother said, "See." "What did you do?" "I moved to Green Bay," Danielle said. "So there you go." They stayed on the phone another hour. At the end of it, Danielle said, "Are you going to answer it?" "No." "Why not?" "And don't say because he's a liar. Say the real one." Claire thought about it. "Because it's the only thing he can't survive," she said. "He can survive me hating him. He'd love it. He can survive a prison term he's already telling people in there that a mafia boss put him away. The only thing on earth Evan Cross cannot survive is being unimportant." Her voice was very steady. "And I've decided that's what he's going to be." The build-out ran 4 months long, and $31,000, over which everybody had told her would happen, and which she had nodded about, and secretly believed would not happen to her. She sat on her kitchen floor exactly once in October at 1:15 in the morning, after the electrical inspection failed twice in 1 week. Isabella came with the van at 1:50. "You didn't call me," she said. "I texted you a period." "I know. I've been waiting 2 years for somebody to explain that to me, and I've decided to just accept it as a thing you people do." Isabella sat down on the floor next to her, in the dark in her coat. "Talk." "I can't open." "You can open." "I'm 31,000 over my liquor license is in a queue behind a Chili's, and my contractor told me verbatim, you should have hired somebody who'd done this before." "Do you want the friend answer or the chair of a foundation answer?" "Friend?" "Your contractor's a coward, and your electrical inspector failed you twice because the first inspector wrote the panel schedule wrong and the second one wouldn't overrule him. And that's a 2-hour problem you've turned into a 9-day problem because you've decided every obstacle is evidence that you're a fraud." Isabella bumped her shoulder. "Which it isn't. It's a Tuesday. That's all it is." "And the chair answer?" "The chair answer is that the trust has a small business grant program for Southside Food Service, and you are eligible for it on the merits, and I recused myself from the committee in April specifically, so this conversation could happen, and you're going to say no." "I'm going to say no." "I know." Isabella put her head back against the cabinet. "I told them you'd say no. They voted to approve it anyway, so it'd be sitting there for 18 months in case you changed your mind. Mrs. Adeyemi called you that stubborn girl, and it was the nicest thing I've ever heard her say about anyone." Claire laughed wet and cracked. Yeah. Is this the part where you tell me you forgive me?" Isabella was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. Claire's stomach dropped. "That happened in April," Isabella said. "In my car outside the fish market watching you argue with a man about a grease trap. It just happened. I didn't decide it, and there wasn't a moment, and there was nothing to say, so I didn't say anything." She turned her head. "That's how it actually goes, Claire. Nobody ever tells you. There's no ceremony. One day you're just not carrying it anymore and you notice about 6 weeks later." Claire couldn't speak. "I was going to tell you at the opening," Isabella said. "I had a whole thing. I'd written it down. Please tell me you still have it. I burned it. It was terrible. It had the word journey in it twice." Baz. Common Ground opened on the second Thursday of February 26 months after a text message. Claire had wanted a Tuesday. Ruthie Owens had said, "Baby, nobody's got money on a Tuesday," and Ruthie Owens had been right about everything for 11 years, so they opened on a Thursday. The dining room sat 54. There were 2 dishwashers. Sal Ferraro came at 5:30, before anybody sat at a two-top by himself, ordered the pork shoulder and a coffee, ate every bite, asked for the check, paid it in cash, and left $22 on a $41 tab. Claire came out and stood by the table. "Mr. Ferraro?" "Ma'am." "You know I can't take that tip. It's more than 50%. You're gonna take it," Sal said. "And next Thursday I'm gonna do it again, and the Thursday after that, and in about 6 months you're gonna stop coming out here to argue with me about it, and that's when we'll be square." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "You were 4 steps behind him," she said. "In March, in Bridgeport." "I was." "What were you going to do?" Sal Ferraro folded his napkin. "Whatever he told me. he said. That's the honest answer, and I'm not going to dress it up for you. 30 years, that's what I was for. He stood up and put his hat on. And then a woman half my size stepped in front of him and told him to trust her, and he put his hands down, and I stood by a north door with nothing to do, and I've thought about that about 900 times since. He nodded at her. Food's good, pork's a little sweet. It's supposed to be a little sweet. Then it's perfect, Sal said and left. The first Thursday community table was the 9th of March, 4 weeks after opening, and Claire nearly canceled it twice. I don't know how to do this without it being gross, she told Isabella. Define gross. Free meal night at the nice restaurant. Rich people at one end feeling wonderful about themselves, poor people at the other end being grateful at them. I've watched it my whole career. I threw a man out of a dining room over it. So, what's the actual design problem? The design problem, Claire said, is that I don't want anybody in that room to be able to tell who's paying. Isabella sat up. Say more. Same table. Same menu. The actual menu. Not a soup pot, not a sheet pan of whatever didn't sell. Same plates, same server. No sign-up, no list, no wristband, no look from anybody at the door. Claire was talking fast now. You walk in on a Thursday, and you sit down and you eat, and 40 minutes later a check comes, and on the check there's a line, and the line says Thursday, and you either put a number on it or you don't, and the server takes the card or doesn't, and nobody in the room ever knows which. Who covers the ones who don't, the ones who do, plus a fund, plus me. And if everybody stiffs you, then I lose about $900 a week, and I've budgeted for it for a year, Claire said. That's the actual answer is, I did the math in December. I can eat $900 a week for 52 weeks and still make rent, and if it turns out this whole idea is naive, I'd rather find out with a spreadsheet than with a theory. Isabella looked at her. How much did you actually lose? She asked 11 months later. First month, $400 a week. And now Thursday's the second best night of the week, Claire said, and I have never once, not one time in 11 months, known which table paid. Isabella took the trust to 11 grants and 4 kitchens in her second year, and got written up in a national magazine that spelled her name wrong, and put the framed page in the bathroom of her office where every guest would have to look at it. Yolanda Pierce ran Bridgeport past 1,300 meals a week, and hired Rosa Delgado's daughter. 19 seizure disorder, well-controlled, terrifyingly good on the line, and instituted a policy that every new employee got a copy of a list of 19 mistakes made by a woman named Claire Bennett in the year the building was rebuilt. Marcus Vail got a plaque he did not want and put it in his truck. Denny Rourke stayed at distribution for 2 more years and then retired, and his wife came out of treatment in the spring, and neither Denny nor Dante ever spoke about any of it, not once, which was as close to grace as either of them could manage. Grantham Pike gave $200,000 to a symphony every year and told people at dinners that he'd once helped save a community kitchen on the South Side. Evan Cross served 22 months. Claire found out he was out from a text message from Reyes on a Tuesday at 2:40 in the afternoon in the middle of a mise en place. She read it. She said out loud, "Okay." Then she asked the kid on garde manger why the shallots were cut like that and did not think about it again until 9 that night. That she decided was the whole victory. Not a courtroom, not a headline. 7 hours. Dante Moretti never once offered. Not in February when she was 4,000 short and doing the thing with her thumb on the seam of her purse. Not in October at 1:15 in the morning. Not at the electrical inspection. Not at the grease trap. Not when the walk-in compressor died 11 days before opening, and Claire drove to Elgin at midnight to buy a used one out of a closed diner with cash in an envelope. He sat in a chair and watched. He came to the fish market on Saturdays in the fall and swept, which was the one thing she'd allowed, and he was extremely bad at it in a way that gave her a great deal of private pleasure. You're pushing the dust around. I'm aware. You're making a ring. You're just making a bigger and bigger ring. Miss Bennett, I have run a company with 400 employees. And you cannot operate a broom. I cannot operate a broom. he agreed. On the night before the opening at 11 o'clock, with the dining room finished and 54 seats empty and both dishwashers working. Claire found him standing at the end of the bar with his coat on. "You didn't offer," she said. "No. Not once. In 14 months. No. Was it as hard as you said?" Dante was quiet for a second. "There were 4 times," he said. "I'll tell you all 4 if you want them. October was the worst. Sal came over and we watched a hockey game and I didn't open a drawer." "What was in the drawer?" "A phone with a number on it." Claire came and stood next to him. "I want to say something and I want to do it once and then we're never going to be sentimental about it again," she said. "That's my favorite kind of speech. Everything in this room is mine." Her voice was steady. "The bank's in Charlotte. 46 people put their names on a piece of notebook paper. Ron floated me 60 days because I yelled at him in a hallway. Isabella has a van. Ruthie's church voted 31-2, and I have thought about the 2 every single day because somebody in that room said no and got outvoted, and I love that more than I can explain." "Claire, I'm not finished. There's a second half and it's the part I couldn't have said 2 years ago." She turned to face him. "None of that is alone. I spent 2 years thinking the opposite of a cage was a room with nobody in it. It isn't. The opposite of a cage is 46 people who asked each other first." Dante didn't say anything for a moment. "May I use my one?" he said. "You've been saving it for 14 months. I've been saving it for 14 months. Go ahead." "I've noticed," Dante said. And that was all. That was the entire sentence. He didn't elaborate, and he didn't explain, and he didn't add a single word to it, and Claire Bennett had to turn around and put both hands flat on her own bar for about 10 seconds. He asked her on a Tuesday in June, which was not an accident. He did it at 4:15 in the afternoon in the empty dining room while she was doing payroll, and he did it badly, and he did not get down on anything. "I'd like to marry you." Claire looked up from a laptop. "That's your opener?" "I had a longer one. I rehearsed it 4 times and it was terrible. It had the word journey in it." "Oh my God, you and Isabella." "I'm going to say the actual thing," Dante said, "and then you can take a year." "Say it." "You told me in a kitchen that I don't get to be the safe place, that I get to be a person you chose on a Tuesday for no reason when you were already fine." He put his hands flat on the table. "So it's Tuesday. There's no reason. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's on fire. Nobody's short. Nobody needs anything. You're fine. You've been fine for a year and a half, and I've watched you be fine from a chair." A pause. "And I'm asking anyway because it turns out that when there's no crisis to hide behind, this is much harder, and I wanted to do the hard version." Claire closed the laptop. "There's a condition," she said. "There are always conditions. It's my favorite thing about you. You don't pay for the wedding." "Claire, I mean it. Not the room. Not the food. Obviously not the food. I'd rather die." "How much of a wedding can you afford?" 11 people and a Thursday, Claire said. And Dante Moretti, who had once thrown a gala for 300 with an ice sculpture, said, "That sounds correct," and meant every syllable of it. They did it in November on a Thursday in the dining room with the community table running as normal on the other side of the room, and 41 people who had walked in off 51st Street ate dinner 11 feet from a wedding, and most of them never knew. Ruthie Owens officiated. It ran 90 seconds and had 1 sentence about God in it, and 11 about a walk-in refrigerator. Isabella stood up with Claire. Sal Ferraro stood up with Dante and paid for his own dinner. 14 months later, on a Thursday in January, Claire came out of the kitchen at 8:40 and found her husband sitting at the community table. Not the two-top by the window that the staff always tried to save for him, the long one. Between a retired bus mechanic named Gerald and a woman with a toddler asleep across 2 chairs. She stood at the pass and watched him for a full minute. He was listening to Gerald with his head tilted the way he'd listened to a woman at a gala 26 months before she ever knew his name, And when Gerald finished, Dante said something short, and Gerald laughed out loud. Claire went over. You're in my section. I'm aware. That's the community table. I'm aware of that too. You have a two-top. Denise saves it. She fights people for it. Sit down, Dante said. She sat down. I want to tell you something, he said, and it's going to sound like a compliment, and it isn't, it's a correction. Now I'm nervous. 26 months ago, I stood in a room and watched a woman get a photograph of her own front door, and I made a decision about her in about 4 seconds. He turned his coffee cup a quarter turn. I decided she needed protection. I remember. And I've told you since that protection was the nicest word I had for a cage, and that's true, and I've been fairly proud of that sentence for about a year. He looked up. It's not the whole thing. Claire went still. What's the whole thing? I wasn't wrong that you needed something, Dante said. I was wrong about what? You didn't need somebody to stand in front of you. He gestured small at the room, 54 seats, both windows of the pass, a check with a line on it that said, Thursday, 41 strangers eating dinner off real plates. You needed somebody strong enough to get out of the way and stay out of it. Not once. Every day. For a year in a chair with a phone in a drawer. Claire's throat closed. That's the hardest thing I've ever done, he said. Everything else I ever did. The business, the money, all of it. Anybody with enough nerve can do that. Sitting still while somebody you love does something difficult and might fail and not moving and not calling anyone. He shook his head slowly. Nobody ever told me that was the strong one. Claire sat there in her own dining room for a long moment. Then she laughed one wrecked syllable and pressed the back of her wrist against her eyes. Do you know what I thought, she said, the second I sent that text? Tell me. I thought that's it, that's my life over. She was laughing and crying at the same time, and she did not care, because Gerald wasn't looking, and the toddler was asleep. 29 years old, standing in a ballroom in a dress I borrowed, and I thought I have just destroyed the one friendship that got me out of that house, and I am going to spend the next 10 years being the woman who did that. And it was the best thing I ever did by accident, Claire said, and it wasn't even the good part. What was the good part? The good part was 4 minutes later. Her voice steadied. When a man I'd known for 11 minutes asked me if I wanted help, and I said no, and he believed me. Dante Moretti didn't say anything. He didn't have to. That Thursday, Common Ground served 91 dinners. Claire Bennett never found out which of them were paid for, and which were not, because she had designed it that way on purpose, on a kitchen floor in December, with a spreadsheet and a broken heart and no money. And that was the whole answer in the end, the one she'd been looking for, since she walked out of a house with 2 bags and $1,100, and a certainty that she was not the kind of woman who survived things. She had survived him before she ever met Dante Moretti. She had built the rest herself, with 46 names on a sheet of notebook paper and a bank in Charlotte, and a friend with a van, and not $1 of it had come from a man who loved her because he had loved her enough not to give it. Real love did not arrive as rescue. It arrived as a chair pulled back, a door left unlocked, a hand kept deliberately still, and a woman walking through the room she built with her own 2 hands, entirely free and entirely finally herself.